right, good afternoon, everyone. This Tuesday, June 27th, 2023, special meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council is now called to order. City Recorder Linder, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Buck.
Here.
Councilors Corrigan.
Here.
Wendland.
Here.
Imbu.
Here.
Burdick. Here. Raff.
Here.
And Councilor Afghan is excused.
All right, thank you, City Recorder. Everyone now, will you please stand, remove your hats, and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, first on our agenda tonight is executive session. I'll ask Attorney Oswego to please read the legal parameters for us.
Thank you, Mayor Buck. Members of the council, the Lake Oswego City Council will now meet under the authority of Oregon Revised Statute 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designed to carry on labor negotiations and to consider records that are exempt by law from public inspection. Members of the news media are specifically directed that they may not be present for this particular executive session. And no deliberations or decisions will be made in executive session. And afterwards, it is my understanding we will reconvene in this chamber.
Thank you, Ms. Oswego. All right, we will, council will now enter the executive session. We expect that we will reconvene the remainder of the agenda around 4 p.m. If you are here to give public comment, there's a white forms in the back to fill out, and please hand those into City Recorder Linder. With that, we will recess into the side room. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are back in order. Thank you for your patience. Folks, we're back in order. I ask you to just please stop talking. Thank you. We're going to start tonight with a presentation and a couple proclamations. But to start things off is Meals on Wheels. I'm going to ask Debbie Bradway to please come forward. She's here to present the city with the annual donation check. Ms. Bradway, it's so good to see you, and we're so glad you're here.
Hi. You want me to sit?
Please, yes, welcome.
Good to see you all again. Saw you last year. I'd like to thank you all for letting us present. I also want to introduce members of our board, Malcolm and Limbroka, and then Maria and Lisa from the Adult Community Center. If you please stand.
Yes.
They're instrumental. Our whole board is all volunteer, and Lisa and Maria do so much for us, so we couldn't really be successful without them. 120 meals a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, about 11:30 to 12 in Lake Oswego. 80 to 90 households, Lake Oswego, getting meals delivered. 20 to 30 people on site at the Adult Community Center, getting home-cooked meals. We're the only Meals on Wheels program that has home-cooked meals. We are the only Meals on Wheels program that is self-funded. We're a 503c that our purpose is to provide respite and steady meals to senior or disabled citizens. If you have surgery and you're unable to take care of yourself, we have quite a few people that use it temporarily just to help get by. Nobody is turned down in Lake Oswego. 50% of our citizens were not able to pay for meals last year. Our average donation is approximately $4. The actual cost of providing a meal is $14. So that's roughly a $10 deficit per meal. There are many sources of funding. There's some USDA funds. We were fortunate to get the ARPA grant through the city that helped provide some of the differential deficit. We get a lot of donations from individuals, community leaders, and businesses. We have various events. October is Meals on Wheels month, where many restaurants and businesses contribute very healthy amounts. I want to thank you for contributing. We try and raise awareness during that month. We also have New Seasons in November, does 8 Days of Giving. We raised a huge amount of money last year now that we have 2 New Seasons, so that was a successful campaign. We participate in the Lake Oswego Summer Concert Program. This year we'll be at 2 of the concerts, one Foothills and one up at Westlake, and we will be asking for donations before the concert starts. And then we split that 1/3 to the city, 1/3 to Meals on Wheels, and 1/3 to a participant who bought a raffle ticket. And that's been very successful. We do fun things like beer brats and bingo. We do that at the Adult Community Center. It sells out in less than a week. We do a bingo night. We have lots of activities, and they sell out quickly. Our problem is we could accommodate more people than the facilities we hold them in. So people look forward to it. So I want to thank you. This is our 9th year of covering the deficit. We usually have about $90,000 to run the program. This year, the deficit for the city was $43,597. So again, we're self-sustaining. Here's the check that covers your generous support. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
and yeah. Thank you, and to the board members and our folks at the ACC that run this program. The benefits you provide, both in the food, the meals you're providing, but also the social benefits through the companionship and those that personal touch mean a lot to the community. And The way you've leveraged support from the business community and residents is phenomenal. Raised a lot of awareness about the need, and we just really appreciate everything you do. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. And speaking of Adult Community Center, which runs through our Parks and Rec department, this month or July, next month, is Parks and Recreation Month. And since 1985, people in the U.S. have celebrated Parks and Recreation Month in July to promote building strong, healthy, and resilient communities. So we are proclaiming July as Park and Recreation Month, and the proclamation is a declaration in establishing and maintaining the quality of life through parks and recreation. It's a big deal here in Lake Oswego, along with its contributing factor to the physical, economic, and environmental well-being of our city. So through the efforts of the National Recreation and Parks Association, the U.S. House of Representatives passed an official resolution in 2009. And today I'm here and signed the proclamation, the largest proclamation, not in words, but just in physical size. It was a rather large proclamation. To declare July as National Parks and Recreation Month in Lake Oswego. This vital message supports the power of parks and recreation in our community by celebrating the important role park and recreation professionals play in bringing people together, providing essential services, and fostering the growth of our community. The proclamation highlights that parks and recreation is an integral part of our community that promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near and utilize the park system, encourages physical activities and recreation, provides much-needed services such as healthy meals, nutrition, and education programming, increases a community's economic prosperity, is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community, is an essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient, and ensures ecological beauty and provides a place for everyone to connect with nature and recreate. So I now declare that July is Parks and Recreation Month for the city of Lake Oswego from this day forward. The signed proclamation will be posted to the city's website. To thank everyone and give an especially large thank you to our Parks Department for all of their hard work. And we invite the community to check out the Parks page and the website to see all the very, very exciting upcoming summer events and festivals. Thank you, Parks Department. I see Director in home there. Thank you. July is, okay, we applaud. Very good. July is also Disability Pride Month. The city has several activities and ways to celebrate, including the following, in which we invite you to participate and hope that you'll join in. All month long, the library is hosting a book display for the City of Lake Oswego July Star Spangled Parade. There's an all-ability employee resource group that is participating, and they invite everyone in the community to walk, roll, or stroll with them. And from July 5th through the 31st, we're going to be celebrating 50 years of Special Olympics in Oregon with an exhibit here at City Hall. On July 15th, from 10:30 in the morning until noon, be talking book and braille services from the State Library of Oregon, and that's going to take place at the Adult Community Center. And July 18th in the evening, 5:30 p.m., there'll be a third Tuesday author series with Siren Nagakiri, founder of Disability Hikers, and that's an online and virtual presentation at the library. And then on July 27th at 7, we're doing a Movies in the Park showing Turning Red. That's going to be at Millennium Plaza Park. The movie features characters that have type 1 diabetes wearing their medical devices showing representation of an invisible illness. So that's great. So we thank the staff for putting together Disability Pride Month. Sounds like a great lineup of events. And with that, we are going to move into public comment. If you're here to provide public comment and have not already done so, please fill out one of these white forms that are available on the table in the back and then hand it to City Recorder Linder up front here. When it's your turn to come up, please come to the front table. You can sit either side. You'll have 3 minutes to deliver your comment. Please introduce yourself. Just give us your first and last name for the record. And then we have the little timer device there in the center of the table to help you track your 3 minutes. First up is Jennifer Marin from Marin. Hi, Ms. Marin. Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Marin, and I live at 18460 Ray Ridge Drive in Atherton Heights. I am here today to voice my concerns regarding the Phase 1 development of Rassekh Park. Last week, Parks and Rec removed over 130 trees suddenly and within a few days. Now that the trees are gone, it has highlighted significant and detrimental noise disturbances from traffic along Stafford Road, which will be further worsened with the skate park. My primary concerns are noise and visual issues. We are being inundated with noise pollution off of Stafford Road due to the tree removal. The street noise is so loud, it feels like living next to a freeway. The proposed tree replacements are insufficient to mitigate the noise, let alone account for the additional traffic and park noises. The area around the preserved land has been thinned considerably, and regardless of classification, created a natural sound barrier and visual barrier. The parking lot and access road will be directly behind our homes. The remaining trees within the preserved land are an insufficient noise barrier. If you are familiar with our neighborhood, we are a community on a hill, essentially in a sound bowl. While Rassekh Park itself is quiet as you navigate up the hill, there are many pockets along our small streets, and especially on Ray Ridge Drive, where the carryover of noise is overwhelming. Parks and Rec has steamrolled this project through without conducting any noise survey or direct impacts to our immediate community. In fact, we were told that the project was on hold. Even the Parks and Rec website for this project has not been updated. Our family chose to move to this area of Lake Oswego 2.5 years ago, precisely of how setback it is from the rest of the city, and we chose it because it is quiet. With respect to the proposed lighting in the parking lot and along Stafford Road, the trees not only created a sound barrier, they also created a visual barrier from Rassekh Park and Stafford Road. The removal has left gaps along the remaining tree line where the main road and park are clearly visible. Although any future lighting will be shielded, it will be directly behind and clearly visible in our home. The quality of life and livability issues must be addressed for our families living in the neighborhood. Remediating the impacts of environmental noise and bright lights to the local residents is essential. We live here. Our home should be a place of respite and quiet. My suggestions are as follows. Construct a wall or a sound barrier along the west side perimeter of the park to mitigate the noise. In addition to the listed trees, Parks and Rec should be required to plant additional evergreens along the west side perimeter, specifically where the park abuts with the protected land in our neighborhood, as well as curbside to further shield our homes from noise and potential lighting. Lastly, park lights should be turned off no later than 8 p.m. In conclusion, I request that the city consider the impacts to our neighborhood and strategize thoughtfully on balancing our livability needs and those of the larger community. And I do want to point out that most of the people testifying today in support do not live in our immediate area. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Maroon. We appreciate you coming to deliver those comments. Next is Frederic Lavios. Ms. Lavios. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Frederic Lavios, the chairperson for the Palisades Neighborhood Association. I want to just briefly thank Mr. Mayor, Mr. Joe Buck, and the City Council and staff for all the work you've done on Rassekh. It's been many years and a lot of hard work, and we look forward to supporting you in the best outcomes for our neighborhood and your projects. And we look forward to especially Phase 2, which actually has the items that the people who live in this city voted for. So we want to support you in doing that as quickly as possible. And the Palisades Neighborhood Association would support and encourage you to look for funding for that in the state funding or elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lavios. We appreciate you being here. Thank you. Kirsty Riley, you are next. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. In February, I'm Kirsty Riley, and I'm not on the board of the Palisades Neighborhood Association anymore, but I'm still a resident. In February of 2022, I brought a group of Palisades residents to a city council meeting to offer their views on the development of Rassekh Park. As you may remember, they were children. And they came with drawings they had made of what they wanted the new playground to look like. We also brought drawings from 150 of their peers from Palisades World Language School and Westridge Elementary. They wanted a real playground in this new park. one with climbing structures and better access for all children. And the city listened. Much to the delight of all these young children and their parents, the budget for the playground increased to $500,000 and doubled in size from 6,000 square feet to 12,000 square feet. We were delighted. 18 months later, the project is no longer completely funded, but the city is planning to move forward first with the skate park, which, and I know you've all heard this many times before, has consistently ranked lowest in importance in community surveys. While the playground, the piece of the project that was most requested by Palisades residents, has been postponed indefinitely. I'm not against the skate park. I was on the task force committee, and my own boys will enjoy using it. But let's not ignore these younger kids. The playground has the lowest budget of all the elements in the park. The land is already being prepared. Wouldn't it make sense from a fiscal standpoint to include the playground as phase one? Palisades is the largest neighborhood in our city, but when it comes to playgrounds, it's greatly lacking. Our kids deserve great, accessible playgrounds. Please, let's not forget about them.
Thank you, Ms. Riley.
Thank you.
We hear your comments. Appreciate you being here. Chris Durkee. You are next. Good afternoon, Mr. Durkee.
Hi, my name is Chris Durkee. I live at 2356 Glenhaven Road. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, for being here on this beautiful sunny day. Thanks for your service to this beautiful community. I'm excited to see Rassekh started. I support the park. I'm speaking as an individual this morning or this afternoon. The City Council made a promise years ago to build the skate park, to replace the park that was removed on Pilkington. Honoring promises is commendable. I think there was also an inherent promise made when the city conducted a survey of amenities for Rassekh. And I know we're kind of beating a dead horse here, but the survey showed that the play area and the picnic area had the highest priority from not just Palisades, but the city at large. So I think an inherent promise was made in conducting the survey that the results of the survey would heavily weigh in the planning for the park. You've heard all that before. The point that I want to make that's new today is that my background is in commercial construction, large projects, convention centers, hospitals, museums that involve a lot of infrastructure. So phase one is largely an infrastructure project that happens to have a skate park in the northeast corner. You've got three elements. There's a north-south element, which is the drive entry parking. You've got an east-west element that's the skate park. And then right at the intersection, at the elbow, is the restroom. And in fact, that's where the play area is going. In planning community projects, capital projects, it makes sense to think through the phasing and plan it in a way that minimizes tearing up work that you've just done, kind of like paving a street and then tearing it up to put a sewer line in. So that elbow area is all going to be torn up. There's a lot of grading equipment that will be on site for grading for the skate park. That grading equipment could be put to use to grade the playground area because there's some grading required for that phase as well. So the essence of my point today is, can we rethink the phasing and use what I think is good stewardship and capital project planning and include in phase one the playground area that's located at that elbow. The city Parks and Rec, as I understand the budget process, has about a $3.7 million carry forward balance from the previous 2 years. And as I understand the rules, those carry forward funds are only usable for capital projects. So I would request that maybe $500,000 that was budgeted for that play area be allocated from that carry forward balance and include in phase one that play area.
Thank you, Mr. Durkee.
Thank you.
We hear your point. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Cody Schumann? Good afternoon.
Hi there, my name is Cody Schumann. I live at 1793 Atherton Drive. How many of you here live at the property adjacent to Rassekh Park? I do. That's my property. My property ends at the triangle to the entrance of the skate park. How many of you pay 5 figures in property taxes to live, for the privilege of living in Lake Oswego? How many of you have school-aged children? I have 4. How many of you behind me even live in the area where you will be affected by the construction of Rassekh Park? How many of you live in any area near Rassekh Park? Probably none of you here. We, the residents of Atherton Drive, have had 0 communication with the project manager since the change to Kira, though promised updates. I've spoken with the president of the Meadowlark HOA, who said that they have had 0 communication since the project stalled, though promised updates. I do not object to the idea of a park. I do, however, object to the number of amenities and the amount of noise and traffic that Stafford cannot handle without significant cost and more construction and disruption to the community. The HOA and Bellaterra have said that they have petitioned City Hall and that City Hall just does what they want, and they are exhausted with their efforts to communicate. You are pushing your agenda without thought to the families directly affected by the construction and by the noise. I also recommend a sound barrier, pedestrian lighting, and additional planting of trees. As it is right now, I cannot even allow my 12-year-old to go through the traffic circle at Stafford Hills because there is no lighting. The white for the pedestrian crosswalk is all but erased. There's a corner where you can't even, people don't even look. It is not safe. What are you doing for the residents of Atherton Drive who are affected by the through traffic on our street because the entrance is at the bottom of our property? How are you protecting our children who live here? But sadly, I think a lot of you are career politicians who find ways to push your agenda regardless of the desire of those most affected.
Thank you, Ms. Schumann. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment? Then, okay.
Mayor, yes, we have someone on Zoom.
Oh, on Zoom, okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Brooke Subert?
Yes, hi.
Okay, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Wonderful, thank you. Hi, my name is Brooke Subert, and I live off of Green Tree Circle, and I've been in the Palisades neighborhood now, 8 years. And I just wanted to say that I am in support of Rassekh Park, especially as someone who is a mom and frequents the area and all the wonderful parks that it has to offer. Today I come before you to ask you to reconsider and evaluate, adding in the play area into phase 1. I just want to echo the points that have already been made today by Kirsty, Chris, as well as Frederic on those efforts, as well as funding. If this is not an option, again, I would urge all of you to please continue to make funding a priority. This is a good use of city funds. It is what's best for the neighborhood and the community. So thank you for your efforts and your ear today.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir, please come forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor. I had signed up online or via email, so maybe I didn't make it
You're
to the
fine.
queue, but
Just give us your name for the record.
Jason Murray, 1350 Ridgecrest,
Thank you,
and my
Mr.
son
Murray.
Quinn.
Quinn.
Firstly, thank you to all the Meals on Wheels people if they're still here. You guys are doing an awesome service for our community. I'm here to speak as a supportive voice for the Rassekh Park Phase 1 development. Thank you very much to the Parks and Rec staff for your hard work. It is greatly appreciated. You guys have really shown incredible dedication and flexibility over the last couple of years to try and get this project over the line, or at least phase one of it. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, the rest of City Council, for your support and consideration. This means an enormous amount to our youth and future generations of not only skateboarders, but everybody who will benefit from the long-term development of Rassekh Park. So thank you. This is a great investment in our community and long overdue. The property has been included in the city's master plan since 1996 as a recreational space, so it's awesome to see that finally coming to use. As you're aware, we currently have 0 skate parks in the city, so one is better than none. I know that we have a lot of playground facilities and a lot of sports complexes as well in other parts of the cities. And obviously the long-term goal of this park is to include those amenities as well. So that is also appreciated. And I think I've heard some of the concerns of other residents today. I think construction noise is a temporary inconvenience, but for the greater good of, and ultimately everyone in the community is going to benefit from these investments. And I just, again, thank you. As a lifelong skateboarder, I'm thrilled to see this coming to our community. It's been a long time coming, and just, again, thank you. I'd like to allow my son to use the rest of my time. Of course. That's on. Thank you.
I wanted to say that me and my friends have always been kicked out or forced to leave the areas that we have been skateboarding, and there's nowhere that we can ride or skateboard. And it would mean the world to us to have a place for us to go have fun and love what we do.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Thank you.
What was your
Mr.
name,
Murray.
please?
I'm Quinn Murray.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Did I see a hand? Please come forward, yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Hudson Bird. I am a junior at Oswego High School. I've been skateboarding for 5 years now. I was part of the decision process of making Rassekh Park a skate park, and I helped create a lot of designs that were promised to go into the skate park. I haven't been focused on it that much. I play football and track, so I wasn't paying attention to that much because I thought it was just going to be something that was promised and be made soon. And then I heard some things about it, about the money and the funding going into it, and that was still on the mend. I just want to say that the closest skate park I go to is Tualatin, and it's still a ways away. I can luckily now drive, but a lot of other kids can't. I have a lot of friends that can't drive yet. I skate around here a lot, get kicked out. It's a hustle. My parents hate when I skate in the driveway. They've taken away all my skate stuff. We just really want to park. And thank you for all that you guys have done. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. We appreciate you being here. Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to provide public comment? Okay. Oh, okay. Please come forward. Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for having me. My name is Hans Frodberg, longtime resident here in Lake Oswego, and also, like Jason, longtime skateboarder. Growing up as a kid, we didn't have any places to skateboard. It just wasn't that way back in the 70s and 80s, and so we had to go into the inner city areas, which aren't the safest places to skateboard, and it was always an aspect of kids that played football or baseball or basketball always had places to go. But the kids that skateboarded or BMX biked were just kind of shunned out and pushed aside. So I think rather than spending all of our money and time putting in skate blocks to keep kids going down handrails or on curbs, why not build an area for the kids that normally get shunned and pushed out and have to go to other places to do it, start turning them into future adults that have pride in their city, stay in this city, continue to put their money to the city, and become, lifelong residents, rather than realize that their type of person really isn't looked upon as very important and pushed out. So they'll go to other cities that allow them to come, which would just take money and future residents away from Lake Oswego. We're in a very important time of inclusion of all races, all sexes, all things. So why not let the kids that want to do the things that aren't your typical sports be included as well? Both of my daughters skateboard. All of my friends' kids skateboard, and there's a time and a place where they should have a safe place to go as well. I mean, I understand the people that have bought their homes and are worried about sound, and my heart rings out to them. But the simple fact of the matter is those grounds were dedicated from '96 to be parks. If you wanted to be in an area to where there's never going to be building, where there's never going to be noise or kids playing and things of that nature, you should do more research about what land you want to buy, what home you want to buy. So unfortunately, they're backed up right to it, but these things need to happen, I think, to allow the kids that have like the mental stresses, the emotional stresses, to where their voice really isn't heard. And I think skateboarders, BMX bikers, things of the fringe sports aren't really heard, so they start going other places, which leads to other things for them to get into. So I think it's really nice that we're thinking of a safe place for these kids to be able to play as well, not just typical American sports athletes. So I really appreciate the idea of having this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your comments. Okay. Last call. Is there anyone else? Okay, great. Thank you for everyone who came to deliver your comments. We really appreciate it. With that, we're going to move on now to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight is item 7.1, resolution 2323. Item 7.2, which is approval of the meeting minutes from May 16, 2023. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second. Councilor Raff, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. We now have the, for city councilors only, this is the resolution 2317, adoption of the appointments to our advisory boards. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 23-17?
Move to adopt resolution 2317.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. And I see Mr. Bruner sitting out in the audience, so I just want to give you a shout out and a big thank you for organizing the whole recruitment and interview process. You did fantastic. Very good. And thank you to all the community members. We had an overwhelming number of folks who applied for boards and commissions, for everyone that went through the interviews, participated in the process. Great gratitude. We have a great group of folks coming in, and if we had even bigger boards, we could put them all on boards. Everyone's fantastic, so we really appreciate that. Okay, moving on to council business. First item of business is a work order 307.1, the Rassekh Park Phase 1 construction award. We have Parks here, Ms. Haggart, Parks Analyst, and Director Anderholm here. Good afternoon to you two.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ivan Anderholm, Parks and Recreation Director. With me is Kira Haggart, our Project Manager and Analyst. She's the Project Manager for the Rassekh Park Development Phase 1. And with that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. The first phase of Rassekh's development marks an important milestone in implementing the community's vision for the Lusher area. As Jason mentioned earlier, the Rassekh property was actually acquired by the city all the way back in 1996, using 1990 Parks dollars from the Parks bond. It was one of the 8 original properties that made up the Lusher area, and planning for that area began with the adoption of the first Lusher Master Plan in 1997. That plan envisioned Rassekh as an active recreation site. It described it as offering public restrooms, a soccer field, softball fields, and parking, and having trails that connect it to the rest of the Lusher properties and a vegetative buffer along the edge of the property separating it from the neighborhood. This vision for the Rassekh property as a place for active recreation and park uses was affirmed nearly 15 years later through the community input and planning that went into the 2013 Lusher Area Master Plan, as well as the Comprehensive Parks Plan 2025 document, both of which describe Rassekh's future as an active recreation park. The design process for the Rassekh Park that you see on the screen today began nearly 2 years ago in early 2021 and included numerous task force meetings, neighborhood meetings, community surveys, a 2-year community engagement effort to learn what the community wanted from this park. The original plan for Rassekh was just the multi-use sports field, but we ended up adding a play area and a picnic shelter and trails based on the feedback that we heard from the Palisades neighborhood. In addition, we also added the 10,000 square foot skate park, which was added in October 2021 based on the community input we heard and that you all heard from the local skating community. The decision to include the skate park in Rassekh makes good on a long-standing promise to replace the old skate park, which, as it was mentioned earlier, was removed nearly a decade ago to make room for the city's maintenance building on Pilkington Road. The final design for Rassekh Park, which is what you see on the screen here, received land use approval last August after 2 public hearings. After receiving extremely high bids for the construction of the full park last fall, we determined that the best course of action would be to take a phased approach to the park's development. In planning for what to include in Phase 1, we worked with our design team at McKinsey as well as the planning and engineering staff here at the city, and a big thank you to them for helping with this, to determine what we needed to include in Phase 1 to make it feasible from a land use perspective and from a public utilities perspective. Last month, we went out to bid for the first phase of development, and I'm very pleased to say that this time around, our bids did come back within budget. What you see on the screen here is the full build, but I've highlighted the portions of the park that will be built out in the first phase. And I'll say up front that part of the reason this property in particular is so expensive to develop is that although it is within our urban services boundary, it has not yet been served by any public utilities or infrastructure. So a large portion of the work that we'll be doing in Phase 1 will be constructing those utilities, and that includes the new public water main, the sewer connections for the public restrooms, the larger of the 2 stormwater ponds, and working with PGE to extend electricity to the site. This utility work is not extremely visible to the public, but it is critical to support the property's use as a public park with all of the amenities that our community has come to expect. We'll also be constructing the new public access in Phase 1, which is the driveway from Atherton, as well as a portion of the parking lot. The amenities that we'll offer at the park after Phase 1 is done will include the public restrooms, bike parking, the skate park, and pathway connections to the neighborhood to the west and also to the multi-use path along Stafford Road. And we will be widening and repaving the pathway along Stafford, that's the existing pathway there, planting street trees and installing street lighting on the east side of Stafford. These are all right-of-way improvements that were required as conditions of approval for our land use approval back in August. The remainder of the area that is not developed during Phase 1 will be maintained as grassy open space until we initiate Phase 2 of the development program, and we know that our neighbors in Palisades are anxious for us to do that. I do also want to note that this contract that we are asking you to award tonight is for the general park construction, which is most of the things that I just described. However, due to the unique nature of skate parks, we do intend to have the very experienced team at California Skate Parks be the ones who construct that portion of the project under a separate contract to ensure that we maintain the integrity of the skate park's design. Also included under a separate contract are the tree removal and the purchase of the restroom structure, which is a pre-engineered structure that we purchase. And I think with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions unless Ivan wants to say anything else.
Thank you, Ms. Haggard. So to address some of the comments, that we heard from folks in Palisades around the playground, it's my understanding that we really, so at first we were going to set this project aside altogether, but then the council really wanted to phase it out so we could at least move forward and not wait years, to start the project. And that it was a near miracle to cobble the funding together to do the phase one, as I understand it. So are we really at the max of what we can spend? Is it my understanding that we do not have another penny to put towards this park?
So we're actually above. I realized Kira said that the bids came in budget, but actually we budgeted 3.2.
Right.
And the project is going to come in at 3.6 with no contingency.
Yeah.
So the department will be using their own department operating contingency for this project. So we're actually well above what we budgeted for this project. We simply cannot add another $500,000 to this project this time.
Right. And have we already I think it's the council's intent that we continue funding this project to completion, not do phase one and put phase two on hold indefinitely. And is that the current plan going forward?
The current plan is to move forward with a funding strategy that includes future city dollars, i.e. System development charges that come in for parks, as well as looking at two of the major state funding, grant funding opportunities, which are the Land Water Conservation Fund in Oregon, amounts to about $4 million a year that's available. It's a competitive grant program. And then also the local government grant program, which has about $5 million annually available in a competitive funding program. So we'll be looking at leveraging future SDCs against these grants. And then obviously, occasionally there are some national programs too, in particular related directly to playgrounds and implementing playground installations. So we'll be taking a look at all of those alternative funding things. And then also, as you're aware, Mayor and Council, that our park SDCs are dependent on development, and though we have a fairly conservative budgeting practice, generally I can say for the last 12 years I've been here, we've generally exceeded those revenues. So I think that in the next year to 18 months, we will have a pretty solid funding strategy, if not sooner.
Okay, that's great. I can see the neighbors did such a good job working, together with the department and creating an amazing design for this playground. So I can understand why everyone is excited to have it. I'm very excited about that myself. My other question just related to comments we heard from the adjacent neighbors around buffering. I see that most of the buffering to the neighborhood is this, riparian area along the stream corridor. How much work is going on in that protected corridor?
None. That's a resource conservation zone. So there were a few trees that were dead invasive species removed near the white dotted line. That's the resource conservation zone, but we don't do any work within that area. So that corridor was intended to remain.
Aside from some of the enhancement work we've been doing.
Right, aside from native plantings.
Okay, yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. Councilor Raff.
I'm super stoked, but skate park design, can you remind me if there are plans within phase one to put a roof over the skate park? No walls, just the covering?
They're not at this time. That was something we talked about throughout the skate park design process and something I know that the skating community wants. We have talked to the team at California Skate Parks about what would be required to put in a cover, and based on the skate park's shape and the area, the kind of clearance area around it, we think it would be possible to add a cover at a later date over part of it or most likely a portion of it.
So in phase one, what you're saying is in phase one, you're going to put the for lack of a better word, the foundation in such a way that in phase two, you could put in a roof if we found the money.
If we needed to add a cover.
So you're putting in this infrastructure in place to do that at some point.
No.
We're not putting in footings, but the skate park's design, and we did discuss this during the design process, the skate park's design and the clearance around it is such that if we needed to install a cover over it later, that would be feasible.
Could deconstructing the skate park.
Exactly, yeah. You would have to dig the holes for the footings.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Corrigan. Oh, did you want to speak? Oh,
Yeah, I
was it Councilor Woodland? Never, well. Even if you didn't want to, yeah. We'll take, yeah.
Do we know the cost of Phase 2 in today's dollars?
I would estimate it at 6.3, 6.5.
Okay.
Including the multi-sports athletic field. And a large portion of that is due to the amount of grading that's required to put in that field.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Make someone like to make a
go
motion?
ahead, yeah, go
Oh,
May I
please,
make
please.
a motion?
Yes, please.
I would proudly like to move to authorize the city manager to sign a contract with Paul Brothers Incorporated in the amount of $2,283,784.20 for construction of work order 307.1.1 Rassekh Park Phase 1.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion?
Can I
Count,
ask?
oh, go ahead. Yes, Councilor.
Yeah, just because some of the neighbors said that there was I know you responded. Is it true that we remove 107 trees or something like?
It is, I have the numbers with me. There were 112 invasive species removed from Rassekh Park. The majority of those were English hawthorns and invasive cherries. 28 of them were non-invasive, non-dead trees, and those are the trees that we will be replanting with mitigation native species.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Raff.
Today is a very important day, in my opinion, for Lake Oswego. Personally, for me, with young children, it's a proud day. It's a proud day for every young person in the city, even adults, to deliver on something that we've been overdue on. We talk all the time about being a very active and livable city, and giving everyone here a place to recreate, and it's part of what we are in the culture here. I'm shaking because I'm so kind of happy and excited about this because it's been a long time coming. I think we should all thank Mr. Jason Murray for his stewardship of this project throughout the whole process. He's, done a great job. All the students and young people of the city who've come out and spoken. It's not easy to speak up here. I mean, listen to me, I can barely do it myself, so I can't imagine being 16 and doing it. So, with respect to Rassekh Park and the completion of it, you have my commitment that we're gonna get the whole thing done as soon as possible. This is not just a phase 1 for at least me, and I don't think the rest of the council. So we will find the funding to get this done as soon as possible. And then ultimately, I'm just proud that we're finally here. It's been great work, city councilors, on all this, and the city itself and the staff.
Thank you, Councilor Raff. A career politician couldn't have said it better. Okay, Councilor Burdick.
I just want to concur with my colleague. Very appreciated to the hard staff work, the involvement of the community and the neighborhood association. I think this is really a team effort. I also want to reiterate my commitment to getting the rest of the park done. And I think as we figure out those funding strategies, we will see that evolve and happen. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later, but as we all know, we had a lot of unanticipated economic and everything else in the last few, the last few years that made us have to really prioritize. And I'm super excited about the skate park. I'm really excited about giving this to members of our community who haven't had this for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And it's really important to that group. So I'm excited to get it going. I'm excited for the future ribbon cutting. And again, just want to thank staff. You guys just did a wonderful job, and thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, advocates. It's been great. And the skate advocates, I mean, you all have made this, happen. And to the neighbors in Palisades, you've been great partners, working with the city on really perfecting these plans. Councilor Wendland.
I just want to make a huge shout out to our city manager, Bennett, who found all the nickels and dimes and quarters and all the sofas in every part of the city to cobble together this budget. For those who aren't fully aware, the pricing environment in construction with LORAC, which is a high priority, and other projects that we've had. Most of them came in on budget, then all of a sudden, when the interest rates started going up and things started happening with construction costs, we had a situation that we were having to make hard choices. And City Manager Bennett, Director Ivan, they put together everything that they possibly could, and they made it happen. And so I think that tells us the resiliency of challenges. We take them on, and we try to get stuff done. And I just wanted to say my appreciation for all that. So, and yeah, Kara,
No,
you've been
that's-
doing a
yeah.
fabulous job on threading the needle to get all this stuff done. So I really appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Yes, that's,
Thanks, Councilor.
we're all happy, honestly. Thank you. I think Councilor Wendland said it, the city manager did some magic when, no, I know you did, you would
Just
say
remember the
that-
next project, the answer is no.
Yeah, well. Yeah, but for the next project, for the folks, I'm an educator, I always want kids to have places where they play and have playground. I will also fight for that. But I am so happy for the skate park. I used to take my kids in Tualatin, I said that, or somewhere, and it was not fun when they closed Pilkington. And, I was so happy to see these young folks come. And for the neighbors who think they are wrong, I think, we are a community and, we work for the greater goods. And I'm pretty sure Parks and Recreation will do their best, for you to not be disturbed as you think. And, as someone who is not a career politician, I would like to tell you that we will look for you also. And for the young people there, it's your time. I think we need to build more skate park in the city. I love skating. Thank you.
Yes. Did you just say greater good? I just have to
Yes,
check.
greater good.
Okay, before it's good.
I heard the greater good too.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Let's just take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Director Ederholm. Ms. Heger, thank you very much. Well, you said it. Okay, we're now going to move into our first of two study sessions on the Clean Energy Program. We have Amanda Watson, our Sustainability Program Manager. Join us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Is this working? Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Amanda Watson. I'm the City's Sustainability Program Manager. My slides are not as beautiful as Kira's was, but I hope you will enjoy. So I'm going to start with a little bit of review, sort of a grounding in the terminology that I'm going to use when we talk about clean energy. I know this is probably a review for all of you, but just for folks in the audience and who may be watching later. So we're going to start with the basics. Oh, yeah, thank you. Is that better? Great. So when we're talking about emissions, or when I'll be talking about emissions, we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions, and these are the gases that contribute to climate change by trapping heat in the Earth's atmosphere. Most often we're talking about carbon dioxide, which is the most common of these emitted by human activities. So you might also hear people talk about carbon emissions or carbon pollution to refer to the same thing. And so then when we talk about decarbonization, we're talking about the process of reducing those emissions that are causing climate change. Clean energy is energy that's produced in a way that does not produce emissions. So it's also referred to as non-emitting energy or carbon-free energy. So when we say clean, we're talking about no emissions that cause climate change in the production of that energy. Renewable energy is a little bit different from clean energy. It comes from sources that renew themselves over short periods of time. So energy that's produced from a source that's replaced naturally, and it can be used multiple times. So think about, obviously, the sun, right? Wind, water, things like that, that's renewable. So there's a few cases in which clean energy and renewable energy are not the same. For example, hydropower is one, where large hydropower is often not considered renewable energy because large dams can have environmental impacts, right, on water quality and on fish. Populations in particular. And so under certain, certain communities or certain advocacy groups will define hydropower as clean energy because it doesn't produce emissions, but not renewable. I'm looking at Councilor Moop. I feel like an educator here. So again, thanks for your patience. I just want to make sure it's clear for the audience. And then another kind of case in which clean energy and renewable energy are not the same is something like waste to energy. So when you're burning municipal waste or you're burning biomass, so organic material, that could be considered renewable because we're always going to have waste around, but it's not clean because it produces some emissions. So when we talk about clean energy goals, we often talk about carbon neutrality. We also use the terms net zero and no net emissions. This all means the same thing. And what we're talking about here is that the goal is we are producing no more emissions than we are reducing from the atmosphere. So it's a balancing. We're producing a certain number of carbon emissions through human activities. We're reducing them through other human activities and other means. So the idea is that we're counterbalancing emissions produced with emissions reduced. The gold standard really is reducing emissions as much as possible and then addressing the residuals. So we're really trying to get to zero emissions produced, but there are many limitations, technology being one of those, to those at this point of time. So the point of this grounding is I wanted to remind everyone of the city's decarbonization goals that relate to clean energy in particular. But as you all know, we have a goal by 2035 to have no net emissions from electricity use across the community. By 2045, we have a goal of no net emissions from on-site combustion of fuels. This is really talking about building energy. So for example, homes that use natural gas or use fuel oil or combusting fuel on-site in addition to electricity. And then 2050, that's our citywide carbon neutrality goal. So we're trying to get to net zero emissions, producing no more emissions through all of the activities that we have in our town, then we reduce. So for today's presentation, I'm going to be talking about clean energy. And so that really relates to these first two goals, so 2035 and 2045, where we're talking about energy use in our community. In particular, we're going to talk about 2035, which has to do with electricity. Just a brief sort of, what are we talking about here? How do we get to net zero, right? How do we get to that 2050 goal? There's two ways, two main strategies. One is replacing fossil fuels with clean energy. So we are decarbonizing the electricity supply. Right now, our electricity is produced through many different ways, right? We have a lot of hydropower in the Pacific Northwest, but there's also plants that are run on natural gas, which is a fossil fuel. So decarbonizing the electricity supply looks at utilities developing new clean electricity generation resources and retiring fossil fuel resources like coal and natural gas. The other strategy to replace fossil fuels with clean energy is to electrify end uses. This is talking about electrifying transportation, electrifying the way that we heat and cool our buildings, and electrifying industrial processes. So moving all of these activities off of other sources of energy to electricity, which we are cleaning up, right? So sort of that's the supply side. The other main decarbonization strategy is to reduce energy use. So there's an old adage that the cleanest electron used is the one that you don't use. And so we're talking about strategies to reduce folks' use of energy through more energy efficient appliances, but also behavior change like switching from driving a vehicle alone to using public transit or walking and biking. So reducing our community's energy demand. So this is sort of the broad strategies of how do we get to our 2050 goals, in particular our 2030 and 2045 goals that have to do with energy. So I want to ground us a little bit in how is our community doing right now. On the pie chart on the right is showing electricity use and LO across the community last year. We get data annually from PGE, our electricity provider, on the number of accounts in the community that are enrolled in their clean energy programs. So you'll see that 19% of accounts in the community, so both businesses and residents, are currently enrolled in PGE's voluntary renewable power programs. So folks are purchasing renewable energy credits through PGE. And then 1%, that represents from our last council meeting where I was talking to you about solar, that 1% represents the amount of rooftop solar that's currently installed in Lake Oswego. So that's 201 customers with rooftop solar systems are making up about 1% of the community's electricity use. Lake Oswego's been a green power community. We're recognized by the EPA since 2015, so we're doing great. But this pie chart shows you that we have a long way to go to get to 100% as well. The rest of the electricity use here is served by PGE's base power mix. And here's another chart that shows kind of the makeup of that mix. Right now, PGE, the electricity that they supply to just everyone, if they're not participating in a green power program, is 39% renewable. The majority is from hydropower, but also wind and solar. And then you'll see a mix of other resources, natural gas, a little bit of coal that they're retiring in the coming year. And then the remainder is electricity purchases from the Western grid that are not specified. Some may be green, but we don't have the data on that. So, I think it's a good start, but it shows we do have a long way to go. Within that 20% of accounts that are green, the city is one of those. So we procure clean, renewable energy for 100% of our eligible accounts. So just wanted to note that we've been doing that for a number of years and do make up a portion of that. Our total electricity use is about 4.5% of the total community's energy use on city operations. So what I wanted to focus with you all on today is an opportunity for a clean energy program that's coming from recent state legislation that provides an opportunity for us to make some real progress towards that 2035 clean electricity goal. So in 2021, the state of Oregon adopted HB 2021, which established a 100% clean electricity standard. What it does is it requires all electricity service providers, so PGE being one of those, to reduce the emissions associated with the electricity that they supply to Oregon customers specifically. So by 2040, PGE and Pacific Power have to supply 100% clean electricity to Oregon customers. They have interim requirements of 80% emission reductions by 2030 and 90% by 2035. So that's huge, and that's a big part of what will help us to meet our statewide and local clean energy goals, that decarbonizing the energy supply portion of it. The other thing that this bill did is it authorized utilities and local governments to develop customer-supported renewables programs, which are also called community green tariffs. This is what I'm going to talk to you all about. And this is that kind of pathway to meet our local clean energy goals. It also established a community renewable energy grant program, which local governments and other organizations have been using to fund particular green energy projects. We've been scoping out kind of opportunities for the city with that program as well. So the community green tariff, I've been told that tariff is a tricky word because when you learn economics, tariff is about international trade, and that's how I learned it as well. But a tariff in the utility world is a description of the rates and charges for how a utility is providing a service. So in this case, it's the terms under which PGE provides electricity to its customers. It describes the rate, but also terms and conditions, any fixed costs, and things like that. So it's a program of rates and charges. This community green tariff, what was authorized by HB 2021, would be a program that reflects the cost to serve all customers within a participating community with renewable or non-emitting energy resources. So essentially, what would it cost and what would the program look like to serve an entire community with 100% clean energy? The program would be developed in coordination with local governments that have clean energy goals and developed to be able to meet those goals. So Lake Oswego is eligible to participate in this program because we have that adopted 2035 clean electricity goal. And basically what a community green tariff would look like for customers is that it would be an additional per kilowatt hour charge on top of that basic PGE rate. So everyone would pay a rate based on their energy usage to PGE, and they'd have a surcharge for this community green tariff program. So I did want to highlight there's a few kind of customer protections that are specified in the legislation and that would be a part of a program like this. The program, I should have mentioned, but the program is designed as an opt-out rather than an opt-in. So PGE's current clean energy programs are all voluntary. Everyone automatically is on the basic service rate, and if they want to participate in a clean energy program, they opt into that. Were Lake Oswego or another community to do a community green tariff, that automatically opts all residential and small business customers into the program, and then people who do not want to participate opt out. So the program would have several different notices to customers, ahead of starting a program about the cost and rate changes, what the program is, and then it would have an opt-out mechanism. PGE is proposing what we have on the slide here, that there's an opt-out window when the program first launches, and then annually, kind of like you would do with benefits, when you change your benefits in a job, there's usually like an annual opt-in, opt-out program, or window rather. The legislation also requires assistance for low-income customers, and PGE would propose for a community green tariff, having the program be free of charge for households at or below 60% of state median income, so that it's not a burden for the lowest income customers. I feel like I'm missing a slide here. So the community green tariff program, essentially how it functions, so it's a surcharge on an energy bill. It collects funds from customers that's then used to invest in renewable energy resources to meet those customers' electricity load. And it can be met by a number of different resources according to the legislation. It can be new or existing utility scale resources, so think a large solar farm or a large wind farm, so the types of projects that are already PGE is working on adding more and more to their mix. But it can also be community-based renewable energy resources. So these are small community scale resources, think rooftop solar, but also a larger solar project on a bigger roof in the community or an open space that multiple people could get the benefits from. Projects called microgrids, which we have a little diagram on the slide here, but essentially a cluster of resources, think multiple solar panels and a battery that can operate connected to the grid or in island mode if there's a power outage to provide continued power. There's also another type of community-based renewable energy resources, in-pipe hydro. So some communities have been able to use excess pressure in their water system to add additional renewable energy into that system, which is really neat. Hillsborough has a project they started a couple years ago. So these smaller scale, local, community-based resources. The other types of options are a little more intangible, but the community green tariff program could be invest in demand side resources, so getting to renewable energy via energy efficiency measures, so reducing how much electricity is being used in our community, and demand response, which has to do with shifting the time that community members and businesses use energy to off-peak times. And that matters because when most people are using electricity, which is between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. each day, that peak time is often have to be met with fossil fuel generation. And it's also when the sun isn't shining as much, the wind is not blowing as much. And so shifting the electricity usage to other times of the day helps us use more clean energy on the grid. PGE already has a number of programs. Peak time rebates is one of them, and time of day pricing. And then finally, the last option for a resource that could be part of a community green energy or community green tariff program is unbundled renewable energy credits, which is about, it's basically, it's a kind of an accounting mechanism. It talks about the green energy attribute of a green resource on the grid, and you're paying for sort of a certificate that says, I'm accounting for this amount of energy from a green energy resource somewhere on the grid. I'm getting a nod. I'm happy to dive into that deeper if folks have more questions on RECs. I have a slide later on if we want to dig deeper. It's an account, yeah, it's mostly kind of like accounting for green energy.
Like how?
You buy them, yeah.
And then but then what you do is it?
It's a way of saying essentially that you are using clean energy by saying that you're paying for it. So actually, I'm gonna go to this slide because I think it's useful.
Is it like you, for example, some polluters, we tell them, for example, to plant in Brazil? Is it that kind?
I know what you're talking about. That's a little different. That's called an offset or renewable energy credit. And there's a lot of terminology here. It quickly gets complicated. But the renewable energy credit, so when you look at the electricity grid, you can't tell if the electricity, when you plug in your phone to charge it, if the electron comes from a coal plant or if it comes from a solar farm. It all gets mixed up in the grid. So a while back, folks developed this system to account for, put a value on the clean energy attributes of that solar farm, right? Because we know it's reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's reducing pollution. So they put a monetary value on that to account. When we have a solar project, it's producing X amount of value because it's clean. And that provides an additional kind of revenue source, right? If people buy those clean energy credits, an additional revenue source that incentivized back in the day the development of more clean energy programs. And then it allowed people who purchased RECs to say, I'm using clean energy, I'm supporting clean energy, right? So it's sort of in a separate marketplace for the green attributes of clean energy.
But is it what you get from the grid? Like if you buy it,
Yeah, it's not, and then that's why it can be complicated, right? So a household could buy have RECs, but their power could be coming from a mix of coal, natural gas, renewable energy. Yeah, so that's when it's unbundled. We use the term unbundled to say the REC is separated from the actual project. So good question. Sorry to have to take a tangent there, but I think that was a really good question. So resource options. The other key feature of the Community Green Tariff Program is the governance of it. And this part, I'm highlighting what PGE is kind of proposing here. And some of it is dictated by legislation, but some of it's a little bit more specific. So PGE is proposing that there is a governing body of local government and PGE representatives, and they would review the program performance, they'd adjust the investments, they would make sure that the program's adequately funding long-term contracts. So there'd be kind of ongoing governance of it. And there would be a grants committee that would be convened by PGE and would help to monitor those community-based resources and energy efficiency, demand reduction programs, if that's part of the program. And say for example, if the number of participating program customers, because if a lot of people were to opt out, if the number of participating customers falls below what's needed to meet the contracts that were bought through the program, you might need to adjust the prices. And so the local government, city council in this case, would need to be involved if there's a price increase, but that governing body would approve any price decreases. So that's they're thinking about the governing mechanism of a program like this. And the last thing to understand is that the Community Green Tariff Program would sunset in 2040, so it would end in 2040 because that is the point in which PGE is required to have 100% clean energy just in their base mix. And so at that point, if there's any additional funding in the community-specific program, it would be returned to the eligible customers as the entire grid becomes clean. So sort of why am I coming before you today to let you know about this program? PGE and the Public Utility Commission, so the Oregon body, has been convening a working group of local governments to kind of understand what was authorized in legislation, to talk about folks' interest, different communities' interest in the program, and what the program should look like. So this is the process as laid out by legislation for the development of a community green tariff program. The utilities, PGE, I'm just going to use PGE in this case since they're our electric utility. We're currently in the local government and utility coordination phase, but they are working on an umbrella tariff, so essentially a program framework, a broad program framework that lays out the key aspects of a community green tariff to be authorized by the Public Utility Commission to say, yes, this confers with what is authorized in legislation. So say, the key things like that there's an opt-out mechanism, what the governance structure is, what procurement methodologies could be used, and the general provisions of a program. Then if a community is interested in participating, for example, if Lake Oswego is interested in participating, we would work with PGE on a specific participation agreement that is specific to our community, that talks about, what resources we would want to invest in, that talks about, if we wanted a different low-income protection threshold, for example, and the specifics for the community. That would happen after the approval of an umbrella tariff. It would require a lot more, local government utility coordination, community outreach and engagement at that point, and that would require formal local government approval through, resolution or an ordinance. We need to figure out the mechanism before that program could actually be implemented in a community, and would also have another layer of PUC, Public Utility Commission approval before program launch. At the stage of program launch, there would be another final local government no-go decision based on the participation agreement before customers are enrolled. So I wanted to give you a sense of it's a long process. We are very much in the first stage of scoping, understanding which communities are interested in participating, what are their preferences and priorities, and developing that broad program framework that's broad enough to allow a variety of participation agreements that meets the needs of each community. I'd love to get a sense from council today, kind of what your initial questions are, interest in a program is, to continue engaging in those high-level kind of scoping conversations, but there'd be many more interventions before we'd get to any kind of specific action in Lake Oswego. So I did want to provide kind of why would we consider a community green tariff program here in Lake Oswego? What are the benefits here? And the headline is that it provides a pathway for cities like Lake Oswego that have clean energy goals, clean electricity targets specifically, that are sooner than 2040, right? Sooner than it's going to happen anyway, to meet those goals in a program that's designed with Portland General Electric and approved by the Public Utility Commission. There's a lot of benefits to that, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but there are specific non-energy community benefits that come from this particular program, because one of those resources that could be invested in through the community green tariff is community-based resources. There are resiliency benefits, right? So when the power goes out, we could have solar and battery storage systems, right, that continue functioning, continue to power folks' homes or critical energy or critical facilities, things like that. It can provide options for local control and ownership over energy projects, right, and economic development. It's possible to develop community benefits agreements under the Community Green Tariff Program. If we wanted to develop local resources, we could get really specific about, contractor equity goals and things like that. There's a lot of opportunity there for local economic benefits as well. So I know that was a lot. I love any clarification questions that folks have, but really specifically, I'm interested in hearing, what questions, concerns, thoughts do you have about a community green tariff program that you would need to know before deciding whether or not Lake Oswego might participate in this? What preferences, if any, do you have related to the types of resources that would be included in this community green tariff program? And relatedly, do you have a weight or a ranking on the different types of kind of aspects and benefits? So, is cost most important and affordability? Are you really interested in making sure resiliency is a benefit that we could get from this program, local ownership and control? So just high level, feedback, preferences, and any questions would be helpful at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson.
Thank you.
Great presentation. We were talking before the meeting, maybe to explain to the rest of the council about what communities in Oregon are even eligible to participate in this program. It's not just any
Right.
any and every city, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it does have to be cities with adopted clean energy goals. So obviously Lake Oswego is one, but the other groups, that cities that have been actively involved in this working group, kind of scoping group, have been Milwaukee, City of Portland, and Multnomah County. Eugene has been kind of tentatively there. I think they're at capacity with other projects, but those are the big ones. I might be forgetting one, but yeah, so it's a smaller handful of communities, right? Folks that have the capacity and specifically have those adopted clean energy goals.
And so PGE already under the same House bill, I mean, they have to be on their own moving to completely clean renewable energy. And this is only a tool. This is not a tool to help PGE accomplish its state mandated goals. This is a tool to help Lake Oswego achieve its clean energy goals, accelerate.
Right. Right. Yes. Actually, I should have mentioned. So anything that is funded through a community green tariff, so that's using community generated resources to invest in clean energy, has to be additional to what PGE would already do. So kind of above and beyond what PGE is doing to meet their state requirements.
So would there be some accountability to this program, so people, because Councilor Windman used the term the funny money, because you wonder, well, where is it going? Where's it going? Is this going? Where's the power coming? I mean, that's we've had those questions a lot, even around our own participation in the clean energy. It's like, how do we know this money is being spent? So how would there be? I guess that would be one important aspect, because I know that all the details are not yet worked out, but know that if we did something like this with PGE, that there would be that certainty that the money that our community is investing is in fact going to resources that our community is investing in. And I know that at the end of the project term, it seems like that's the intent, because even money that hasn't been spent is supposed to be returned to the ratepayers, but that there would at least be that oversight, and I appreciate the way that they're proposing setting up the governing structure, so there is local government involvement, so we'd have an eye on that, so it doesn't just seem like we're padding PG's bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. They're still working out kind of the exact details of how you would account for that additionality of the resources, but that is something that will be part of the program. And then there's some things that are easier to account for. So for example, if it's the community-based resources, if it's rooftop solar or community solar, you could say that's a project that was funded with these dollars, right? But they will be working, they have a methodology there we're talking a lot about for accounting for those utility scale resources, right? So if community green tariff goes for, additional community utility scale solar farms or wind farms, they're figuring out like, how would we account for that? It's under discussion, but definitely will be a part of the program.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a good question.
The program like this really could help the community accomplish, several goals. I mean, one in regards to just our climate goals, but also in regards to, emergency preparedness. And so, I mean, that element of the program, I think, would be very attractive to the community, especially, the tangible project, even if it's not 100%. I mean, we're never gonna, I don't think, have anything here in the city that's producing 100% of what, we need. We'll have to go, but something that is tangible that the community can really feel ownership over and participate in this program. And of course, we talked about this at Sustainability Advisory Board last night. Of course, the big question is, what's the cost?
Yes.
I mean, that obviously.
That was my question.
$5 a month versus $200 a month. I mean, these are two different numbers, right? So, and Ms. Watson did a good job explaining. I mean, that's because the program is not put together. But I did note in the staff report, the survey that they put out to folks, it seemed like for ratepayers, there is a wide, across income ranges, a wide desire to participate in this type of program, which was good to see. They were using a $5, 5%, bill.
Yeah, this was a study that PGE did back in the fall of 2020, and unfortunately didn't include Lake Oswego, but a number of communities in our region. It was Multnomah County, Beaverton, Portland, and last community. But yeah, like you said, there was a lot of support for participating in it. The benchmark we have for how much it might cost is that PGE's current voluntary green energy program costs residents about $5 a month to be 100% renewable with the RECs option. So, there's a lot of variables that would determine a community green tariff price, including the resource mix. But that's our best potential benchmark with a lot of hedging, and Certainly, if we were to want to pursue this, and getting into the details with PGE, they'd be able to give us a lot better estimates, and we could have a lot more information then.
Councilor Wendland.
I don't know where to start. If you go back to the, by 2035, we're going to have no net emissions from electricity use. Can you explain what that means? You're saying every Lake Oswego building that's sitting here, privately and publicly owned,
Would have emissions-free electricity. So it means that all of the electricity that we use in Lake Oswego, so all of the buildings would come from 100% clean energy sources. So PGE is...
Okay. So when you say clean energy, that doesn't include hydro.
It does include hydro, yeah.
I thought that...
Hydro is not always considered renewable, but it is considered clean because there's no emissions from hydro, yeah.
Okay. So right now, renewable energy is 20% of what we produce.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's nationally. I mean, I just looked it up. We couldn't even get LORA built within 6 years. I mean, 2035 is
10, 12 years.
yeah, I mean, it's like almost tomorrow. And then when you say like by 2045, does that mean that we will not have any natural gas in Lake Oswego?
Not necessarily. It's a net, the goal is written as net, so it could be there's some natural gas, but we are offsetting it, and this goes to your earlier question, Councilor Mboop. It's a balance, right? So it could be that by 2045 there's still natural gas or other types of fossil fuels used in the community, but we have other projects that are balancing that by sequestering carbon, by taking carbon out of the atmosphere.
Like?
Tree planting is one of the big ones for a community scale, essentially.
So would we have to plant like 1 million trees to, I mean, I guess a lot of
understand.
this is it's all words, philosophy, ideas at the 50,000 foot level. And I have a harder time figuring out how you get from place A to place B with just words. Because it's kind of like concepts that haven't been proven. It's metrics that haven't been established. I mean, I don't necessarily know, what the true goals are. And I think we do need to have renewable energy. I think we need to do all of these things. I truly feel that way. But I look at, I don't want to be disappointed in 2035 if we're at 15% of our goal.
Right.
I don't know how we're going to measure it. Do we have all that data from the city to say, okay, this is what we're using, this is where we need to go, and this is what we need to replace it with? I mean, do we need to plant 4 trees or 40,000 trees? I mean, when you talk about things like that, I just don't.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
That makes sense?
they're big numbers. No, I totally get it. Big numbers, big concepts, long timelines. I'll say the kind of what we know for sure is that 2050 target, right? So that is what international climate scientists tell us is needed to meet, to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, right? Reduce the or avoid the worst consequences of climate change. And then we've worked backwards from there. There's a lot we don't know, right? Technology changes very quickly. And so we know it's possible with the technology we have today, but the hope is, and I can assume that that's going to keep getting better. And the tools we have at hand 5-10 years from now will be different from what we have today. Just focusing on the 2035 target, I do think it is realistic, and part of the reason is that we have this community green tariff program option, right? So right now, PGE is required by the state to clean up their electricity supply to reduce emissions 100% by 2040. And they do a lot of planning. They do annual planning, they do 10-year plans, and they just put out a clean energy plan of how they're going to meet that goal. So they're telling us we can do it. It's going to be really hard, and there are additional supports they're going to need to do. They're going to need to build a lot more renewable energy resources, but they're saying they can do it. And the community green tariff is a way that we could sit down with PGE and say, okay, this is our goal. Help us get there through a combination of different programs. So some of it will be building physical renewable energy resources, solar panels and things like that. But some of it will be enrolling more community members in programs that helps them use energy in a more efficient way, right? Shift how they use it to different times of the day, reduce where they can. So through a combination of things, we know that we can get to these goals, and we're being told by the utility that they can meet the 2040 targets. They submit their plans to the state, and the state reviews them, and fine tooth comb. So pretty confident in that near term goal, and then the 2050 goal that's the kind of best we know from international climate science, and I think we're going to get better and better in kind of figuring out how we get there over time. But those are all really good points.
Isn't kind of from what I understand, there's kind of a, like you say, an accounting trick that's going on. Everybody's going to be buying these RECs, and they don't all exist. So we're all going to feel good that we've all bought this, which is essentially a charge that we're going to charge ourselves for an offset against our carbon footprint. And there's not enough RECs in the world to offset that. So that's where
they do exist. So I will say that the RECs, renewable energy credits, they're certified. So there's a certification system called Green E that makes sure it's not double counted, that there is a real resource it's tied to. So there is a credibility, that's not the right word, but to RECs, it's a real thing. Where the squishiness comes in is that you could have a renewable energy credit coming from a program or a solar farm in California, right? And so we can't really say we're supporting local green energy production, but it really is coming from a facility that is contributing clean energy.
And you don't think the 40 million people that are in California are also counting that as their?
Not the same one because of that certification system. So it's a real,
right.
attributable thing. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But I understand the question though. Yeah, it is. And that's why I think my preference were like Oswego to pursue a program like this would be to not focus too heavily on RECs, but really focus on those real local, community-based energy projects where we can get the additional community benefits.
Well, you ask us, again, I would like to know what the green tariff is, how much, and then what the rate would be and whether it would be guaranteed over a certain time period so that they don't give you a teaser rate of 5%, and then all of a sudden they're asking for 22% rate increases every year for the next 12 years, which I think is, frankly, folks, PG&E is going to solve this by raising our electrical rates. That's how it's going to be substantial. So, just so everyone kind of figures out, when you put dollars and cents to concepts, then people have an evaluation. I would also say that it would be interesting if we did get this narrowed down to put it before the people for a vote to see how they would support or not support an additional tax. And I would call it a tax versus a tariff because I think that's utility speak for just another thing on the back of your bill that accounts for 40% of your payment is all these little tariffs and additional charges for everything under the sun. So, but that's just my.
Yeah, I think a rate is probably a better way to talk about it than a tariff. Tariff is a technical term.
Because people are going to say, where's the T?
Right, yeah.
So what are you importing? So I think we need to be honest with our ratepayers and honest with our community to say, I'm willing to pay more on my energy bill, but I don't know, there's a lot of people, every time we even raise the street pavement tax, whatever, to try to get pathways that everyone wants, and we still get discouraging emails saying, what are you doing? I'm on fixed income. I can't afford this. Prices are continuing to go up. My property tax bill just went up, so.
But it is an opt-out, so that's a good opt-out.
Yeah, that's an opt-out.
You don't have to pay it.
Right. But if everyone opts out, then have you accomplished anything?
I don't think everyone would opt out.
No.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. Good questions. Councilor Burdick.
So thank you, Ms. Watson, for all this hard work and kind of going through all this information. It's a lot. And I, for one, am actually pretty excited about this possibility, because does it answer all the questions and solve everything? No, but it's a step and it's a tool to get us moving forward, to thinking about how we can change our habits, how we can individually kind of make more of a contribution to using and having clean energy. I think the resiliency is very intriguing to me, and I think really important for our community, because, you know, again, in a disaster, that could be huge if we have more resiliency within our community and having that. And I do think it's very important that this is an opt-out, so that people have the option, you know, for whatever reason, if they need to opt out. I do think in our community, my hunch is we're going to have more people opting in than opting out. So I think we could have a really positive program going that will help us get to that 2035 goal. So that's very exciting. I do think Councilor Wendland brings up some really good points that we'll want to make sure to follow up on, such as the increases, you know, and what is it going to cost. I think we'll need a lot of community engagement in terms of hearing what the community thinks, and also just making sure they're aware of what's going on so no one feels blindsided and clearly understands the opt-out if they choose to do so. And I also think the mayor brought up a really good point, like, how are we going to make sure we know, you know, what we're doing is kind of working for our community and benefiting our community? I think that's a very important piece to me, is that, you know, again, if we're all willing to kind of put more skin in the game, that we're going to see it here locally first. So those would be the items I think that are kind of my priorities and maybe where some of my concerns are. But I think overall, I'm really excited because we need more tools to help our communities achieve these goals sooner. So I think it's great that, you know, internationally we have this 2050 goal, but, you know, there's a lot of information saying that that's even too late. So I think anything we can do to bring things forward and make them happen quicker, I think is a good thing. So I appreciate your work and creativity, and I support continuing, you know, onward, and what can this look like? Again, lots of questions still that need to be answered, but I think this is a positive step. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Burdick. Councilor Wu?
Yes, I mean, thank you, Ms. Watson. I honestly think that, and still, this is the educator speaking, when I see my toddler in our school and I look sometime, you know, it's like what Gramsci used to say, like when he say, optimism of reason, of will, but like pessimism of reason, because if we look at the global scale, what is happening, even in America, where like now there are some places where it's 113 degrees. In Texas, some folks are dying because of this. So it's not a joke, it's serious, and as local political authorities, we have to take bold measures, like the bold measures to decide that net zero has to happen. If not, we will disappear as a species. And this is not jokes, these are reality. Like folks who thought it was a hoax on global thing, they have to rethink, because as we are talking, it's happening. Even in our communities, we can see some species of trees dying, some lake drying out in America. And, you know, so I think what you are bringing here is just part of what we have to do to save us as a community, and it's a global political will that we have to put together, you know, to solve the things. And I agree that it will cost, you know, it cannot be, not only it will cost money, but it will cost some lifestyle to go away. Like green lawns around things soon will not gonna happen. People will have to stop watering their lawns. You know, we can, and that's nothing compared to what we even gonna lose. There are many things that we won't be able to do anymore. So I think it's a matter of political will, and since we are here and decide, I think we need to embolden our communities to tell them of the dangers of, and have them listen to specialists. Chomsky was talking about that last week or 2 weeks ago on the dangers. Some folks who are even pessimistic, they say it's too late, that we cannot even do anything. Is the way we're gonna, but people like us, we are optimistic and we think we can do something. By 2050, we can do this thing. It's feasible with the technology we have now. We can do the net zero emission. We can reach that in 27 years. So in 27 years, I think. So it's possible. We have just, us as councillor, if we put something, the others that are coming after us, they will add to it and we will go. And so for me, I've been talking to PG even on that. Yeah. And honestly, we have to recognize that they are a good partner in working with that. Like, I mean, they are really ahead of many other companies in, you know, like they told me they want to even put electric, you know, like the EV stations on poles, street poles, and many other things. And the credit, all these things we are doing when we have a lot of solar things, when there are storms and the grid is destroyed in some places, we can continue to have, you know, we want our police to have electricity, our fire, because at least our city to function. And if we go that route, I think, you know, I just want to tell you that I really appreciate your work in the city. And, you know, yes, last night I know you were going to meet with the advisory board and they're doing also wonderful work. And I support what you're doing. And I think the city should move on the direction you are advising.
Thank you, Councilor Bowe.
Yeah.
Councilor Corrigan.
Councillor Wendland's concerns I think, are held by many people, and I think they're legitimate, and I think there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. I think one of the ways to think about something like this is to go to the other end of it, which is to think of what happens on the ground here with what could happen with this program. So my mind goes to, so we collect the fees and we create community solar, which is a solar installation on a big building. And that brings us things we don't have right now, which is a distributed energy production in case of a natural disaster, a civil emergency. And that can actually save lives. And in addition to doing that, it can also reduce our costs. So the cost reduction element of solar is real. There are people here in our community now who use solar panels and they have batteries and they live around other people who have solar panels. And one of these people I was talking to, their electricity bill is always about $12 a month. When they get extra solar, they can offload it to other people to help them if they're not getting, it just turns out to be this microgrid where the energy is managed in our control and very effectively, and it actually saves money. So I think if we start to think about what we could actually do right here, like for instance, I don't know, have we identified any sites where we could actually put community solar, like rooftops of like the maintenance center or schools, or are there places like that where we could consider doing that and maybe use something like that as a pilot project?
That's a good question. We haven't done like a citywide analysis yet. We've looked at projects here and there. We actually looked at LORA, but for many of the reasons that we heard about with the inflationary situation, didn't end up working out. But yeah, I think that is one thing we can do regardless. But yeah, we know there's some large rooftops. There's opportunities to look at business rooftops as well. And we already have solar installed at the maintenance center and on City Hall, just smaller scale. Another kind of bigger solar project that is in the works would be on a new wastewater treatment project plant. We're looking at rooftop solar. So yeah, there are certainly candidates. We need to do the analysis to figure out where, but there certainly is a lot of rooftop space on LO that we could look at for community solar. So yeah.
So we think that a program like this could create enough revenues to fund a project like that?
Exactly. Yeah, it would be designed in that way. So essentially, we'd set a goal. If we had a goal of achieving a certain amount of community solar, you would then have that goal, and the revenue or the rates would be based on that. So it's sort of you have the clean energy resource goal, and then the rate would be based on the money that would be needed to fund that. But yes, it could be funded for local community solar projects for sure.
I think that's really exciting, and I think we need to start to think differently about this with all the challenges that are coming at us. So I'm very excited about this, and I appreciate you bringing it to us.
Yeah.
I think that a tool that, this is a tool the community can use to help achieve part of our climate plan, I think would be really well received by a lot of people in the community. But hearing the comments from, my colleagues, definitely strong community outreach is going to be very important. I mean, this is a very kind of esoteric concept. I mean, I had to read your report several times and your slides to think and I attended the meeting last night thinking okay, really, how does this work? Because, we get our power, and our biggest relationship with it, aside from, of course, seeing it, is the, piece of, the monthly bill with the, series of various charges and all that we get every month. We think, well, what the heck is most of this stuff for? And so it's hard to form that real, physical connection. So, I think there's a desire here to have a project that the community can really feel is a part of our community, adding to resiliency and a tangible way of connecting with the source of our power, because we're so removed from it, right? No, I mean, aside from solar installations on some rooftops on the building, it's far away from us, the generation of power. It's not something we see every day. We just see the use of it. So that connection, I think, helps understand how the community aspect of this program. So, but this sounds like it's a kind of a long timeline here. We're just
It's a long progress. Yeah. So
By 2035?
fortunately before then, there's many questions that need to be worked out. There's obviously deep and thoughtful community engagement that needs to happen. PGE is planning on filing that umbrella tariff. They would like to file the broad program framework with PUC to get that initial approval by the end of this year. So they're planning on filing. So the approval process then takes some time. So I think realistically, if we're interested in pursuing this, it would be maybe late next year or early the following that we would be getting into the nitty-gritty of what does LO's program look like. As soon as the umbrella tariff is filed and approved, we could start more, we could have additional conversations with you all, start that community engagement, and get into the understanding more what could an LO program look like, what would the prices be, and have that. But I'm guessing it's going to take a couple years to get a final community-defined project, or program rather. These things just, it has to be a thoughtful project. It takes some time to go through the regulatory piece. And the other question in the back of the mind, we have to keep thinking, it is a 2035 goal, so it will have to, that's the timeline we're looking at. It's going to have to happen before then for it to bring that benefit. Yeah, so move as quickly as we can, but in a thoughtful and deliberate way. So it's that balance.
Well, it seems like the world has gotten into, you go to Home Depot now, and you can't really buy a gas-powered almost anything, which is great. Yeah. I mean, we're starting to force the issue through economics and through free market. Solar panels on houses, I mean, seems to be a great idea, and I think it's wonderful, but I think we need help for people to understand how to do it. That's with credible sources, because, I mean, people may have to write a check for $25,000 or $30,000 to get the project put in, and they may say it's going to take them a 20-year payback. Well, not if interest rate or energy rates are going up by 20% a year. It may be a quicker. So I guess some of that, you have to have a tangible, I guess, my point, and I appreciate, I didn't say up front, I appreciate all the work that you've been doing. It's wonderful. I just got directly to my points so I could remember them. But they did all the flowery language, and I agree with them 100%. My big thing is we have to have some sort of a tangible carrot for people to buy onto the vision. And that's where I think more of the details need to get into the conversation with PGE to say, okay, what exactly can a person in our community do, and what are they going to get? Because we have a very educated community that is supportive of sustainability, but they're also really smart, and they're going to ask tough questions. And, and I don't think we've really started to even ask tough questions yet. So, and people will. And once you get the carrot there and people say, hey, it's a payoff, I can evaluate it, then they will, I think this community will sign on. But we need to give them the why.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank
Watson.
you very much. This
Thank you. You have
very
great
helpful
lives.
feedback. I appreciate
Yes.
it. And I'll, keep you all updated as things continue to develop and we get more information and address all of the really great questions that you've brought up today.
That's great. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Is everyone okay to move to the next item? Okay. Might just go bathroom check. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Next, I'll invite Chief and Captain to come on down. We have a annual police dialogue report and update. I have 2 minutes. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thanks for having us here this evening. Appreciate it. I'd like to start out, about a year ago, I was sitting in the city manager's office interviewing for this job. And one of the things that became really crystal clear to me was the desire, the need, the want for our community to know what's going on in our police department and for our council to know what's going on in our police department and really display what true transparency looks like. And our engagement at this point and coming in almost a year later from at least my interview time in my 2+ hours with the city manager, which was wonderful, I think really offers us an opportunity to talk about not only where the numbers took us from 2022, which I think is important for us to take a look at, but also to take a look at what changes, what things have we done in the last 9 months since I was able to come in and become the chief of police here in Lake Oswego. And I think there are some really good things that we can highlight of the accomplishments that we've done. The first thing that I'd like to highlight, which is really kind of a rare thing, I think, in our community or in the law enforcement community, is that we're at full staff when it comes to our sworn officers. I look around at agencies around us, around the entire state. I don't see people who are in our position. I think that says a lot about what goes on in our community. It certainly says a lot about the support that we receive from our council. People want to come work for the city of Lake Oswego. One of the other things that we've been involved in is an ongoing recruitment for our communications. So for LOCOM, we are going to be interviewing, I believe, 18 candidates for positions later this week. That's a pretty good turnout. When you start looking around the rest of the state again, and you're looking at people who are trying to get hired or recruitments that are going on, you're not seeing that level of engagement from the applicants. We're in the process of hiring another somebody to work in our evidence room, property evidence. Again, the quality of the candidates, incredible. We ended up coming down to 2 really, really highly qualified folks that either one would be a great choice, and both really want to come work and live in the city of Lake Oswego. So I think those things are super important. We look at some of the initiatives that we started with within the organization, and we focus on things like professionalizing our background process. Not to say that our backgrounds weren't professional in the past, but we used in-house employees. We used detectives who already have caseloads to do background work. Now we've been able to, with the support of the city, we've been able to hire people on an on-call basis to do those backgrounds. I think we're getting them done quickly. They're not distracted with other duties. We've moved to a new software called eSoft, which allows us to do a lot of that work electronically, which then again speeds up the process. It allows the applicants to engage more quickly and get information into the background investigators so that they can get that work moving forward. The other one that I'm going to say that I'm going to take a personal excitement to is our benchmark program, which is our analytics that allows us to really take care of our people. It gives us a true view and picture of what each of our employees is exposed to. It allows us to take a look at their time, what time they have on the books, their exposure to calls for service, the traumatic events, internal affairs complaints. I mean, you name it, we have a one-stop shop where we're going to be able to go and take a look at what it is that's going on with our employees. And the whole goal here is to make sure that we take care of our folks before we get to a place where we're in a discipline process. So all really popular, or not popular, but really positive things that we're doing to make sure that we're focusing on the wellness of our people. I think the other thing, we recently had Sergeant Scott Anderson did a really nice program, a mentorship program, development for our folks within the organization. But unlike what he's done in the past, we opened it up to outside organizations. So we're not only taking a leadership role within the city of Lake Oswego, we're also focusing on other agencies within Clackamas County and providing that mentorship and development program. The other thing I'd really like to focus on for us is that we're a learning organization. And I think we can highlight it. There are some things that have happened recently in taking a look at critical events, one of which happened in one of our grade schools recently, where we were able to really dissect what took place. We took a look at the positive things. We took a look at the things that need to be worked on. We created an after action. We memorialized all that information, and I think that's stuff that we can continue to grow with. The other thing that I'd like to focus on is our departmental changes. One of the big things for us is the use of data. Use of data is really, really good because it tells us the things that we're looking for, as you all know. One of the things that I really caution us about, and you'll probably hear this later, is that the numbers in the city of Lake Oswego are not as big as they are in other places. So it really doesn't take much to change a percentage. But when you take a look at the actual numbers and applications, it gives you a better picture of what it is that you're looking at. Sometimes percentages get way out of whack when you're looking at so few incidents, like 50, you get an additional 4, and next thing you know, you're looking at a percentage change that looks pretty incredible. But we're looking at our IA processes, keeping track of, and I'm not going to bore you with all the things, but we're tracking monthly crime stats. All of our UCR, NIBRS data that we're taking a look at, we're using in a comparison to years past. We're created some new budget tracking codes so we can see where exactly are we spending overtime. What are the things that we can what are things we can cut back on? What are things that we absolutely have to do? So next year, I'm hoping that we have that kind of information to report back to you on. Kind of the last thing I really want to focus on is our commitment to engagement. And the things that we've been doing very intentionally, our trips, or our program that we did with Museum of Tolerance, I think really highlights our commitment to community, as well as our commitment to other agencies within the city and the school district by the work that was done. And some of you got to go there and experience that firsthand. It was a heck of a trip back for a couple of us, but little extended stay in LA. And we're already at the point where we're setting up follow-up meetings that confirmation should be coming out within the next couple of days as far as what that final time is going to look like. But we're also present at neighborhood association meetings. We're present at the Respond to Racism meetings every Wednesday for coffee. I mean, we're doing all the things to be out and be engaged with our community. We're involved in city events. I think working with our Parks Department, working with the libraries, and participating as a partner with the other agencies within the city highlights our commitment to what we're doing within our community. We take a look at that and then we say, go to the next slide, what's next, right? And I think Captain Simon, who's sitting here next to me, said it best to me the other day. He said, Chief, why don't you let the dust settle a little bit? Before we start making a whole bunch of new moves, why don't we let things happen? So what this organizational chart shows you is that we took a look at our organization, which is different than what it was a year ago. We looked at it with the intentional purpose of trying to divide the work up more equally at the upper levels of the organization. We had really one lieutenant who seemed to have a whole lot of responsibility and was causing him to be here much more than he needed to be. And we were looking at ways to spread that around so that that requirement wouldn't be so strong on him. So we shifted some of the work. I think we've become more efficient in how we're doing it. The highlight here is that I think we're going to continue to look at how we can become more efficient with what we're doing. We're going to continue to look at supervision models that make sense. and look at who, our direct reports. I'll highlight an example right now, is we have our records folks and our property evidence room reporting directly to a captain. So some of those things are the things that we're going to take a look at and see how can we clean up some of the supervision direct report aspects. So with all that being said, I gave you all the positives, the highlights, the great things that we're doing, and then I'm going to let Captain Simon talk about all of the data and the audits for the year.
Thank you, Chief, and good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. So, well, he doesn't want to bore you with data. That's what I'm here to do. So let's just jump right on into it. And so talking about 2022, let's get to the numbers. First off, important to talk about total incidents. That includes our calls for service and our self-initiated stops. Calls for service are exactly what they sound like. So we get a call that someone needs some assistance, and that's where we go to. Our self-initiated stops are typically going to be our traffic stops and pedestrian contacts that we self-initiate. Most of it is self-initiated stops. I can't leave out, and I have to make sure I put a note here to talk about the first step in our public safety chain, and that is to talk about our dispatchers and the sheer number of calls that they take every single year. We are so thankful to have that group back there doing what it is that they do. They provide an exemplary level of service, and they set that bar real high for the rest of us. So between 21 and 22, we saw about a 7.15% increase in total incidents. I saw just about a 7% increase in calls for service and about an 8.5% increase in self-initiated contacts. Obviously, we're getting further and further outside the COVID years, so we're definitely getting back to business as usual, if not even a little bit busier. Now, even though the chief and I are dressed as nicely as we are not the ones out there that are making the contacts all the time and making the traffic stops and responding to the call. Well, I'm not, he might be. But when you start breaking that down by officer, like who's actually responsible for this, we look at it's probably around 38 of our sworn staff are actually responsible for generating what you're seeing up here, and that equates to about 660 incidents per officer each year, which is about a 4.5% increase over the year prior. So let's talk about the calls for service. So cases between 21 and 22 increased about 3.5%. Arrests increased about 13% over the last year. Part 2 crimes, which you'll see are described up there, increased about 35%. The biggest increases we saw were in the burglary and larceny categories. Larceny is your standard theft, so when you see the stuff on Nextdoor talking about thefts from porches and people breaking into cars, that's usually where that is captured at. We saw in Part 1 crimes about a 10% increase over the last year. And then miscellaneous offenses that captures our alarms, DUIs, DHS cases, increased by just 1%. So most of that we saw is in that Part 2 category, which it was some of the largest increases we saw. But we have enough data right now so far that in 23 it's actually decreasing again. So as we get our folks up to staff, we get more people out on the road, it's certainly helpful to respond to these types of things. Much like last year, we talked about some noteworthy calls for service that jump out. The reason why these jump out to us is, one, they're the kind of ones you see in the news. They're also the ones that lead to other activities that we engage in, which I will bore you with later. Crashes increased about 18% over last year, which is kind of to be expected, just given the sheer number of people back out onto the road. Anecdotally, from what I've seen, I think that people still want to drive as if it's COVID times, and so we're running into that a little bit. The rest of the categories where you see, some increases, I mean, as the chief talked about when we first started, the numbers are so small, the percentages will seem a lot. If I was to say that, there's a 62% decrease in robbery, and that's fantastic, but we don't have a lot of robberies. So it's good that it's going down, which is important. But the things that I will point out, as I talked about before, is the increase in burglaries. We think some of this has to do with a lot of people getting back to work and they're leaving their homes. So we use things as a potential target. And then thefts. Again, so a lot of cars being broken into. I would still say, and I think I said this last year, if I could get Lake Oswego residents to just please take stuff out of your car. Most of the break-ins are actually not forcible. It's just an unlocked door and things are left in there. But that's where we get a lot of those. I want to talk about our behavioral health specialist. Amber is just a 10. She's been a pioneer for us in establishing our behavioral health unit, unit of one, sort of. You know, she actually liaises with a bunch of different folks here in the Clackamas County area, and 2022 was actually her first year doing this for an entire year. She worked with partner agencies to help create a program called the OWLS program, which stands for Oregon City, Westland, Lake Oswego. And it's kind of a crisis intervention team comprised of those 3 municipalities. And so we're sharing resources and sharing ideas in order to help address livability situations where folks need assistance. And she's doing a great job with that. The program continues to evolve, and as she finds new ways to find value, she does that, you know, and we just kind of try and give her what she needs and help her along her way. So we're lucky to have her working with us. As far as responding to calls, you'll see that, you know, in Lake Oswego, she's gotten pretty familiar. It's a pretty balanced response between where she responds with police and where she doesn't. You know, our adult resource officer, who, you know, obviously is a sworn police officer, but, you know, does things a little bit differently in that position. So with that, you know, she gets a good sense of the types of contacts that we have frequently here in the city and where she feels comfortable being able to go and have those contacts, you know, by herself. A little different with West Lynn simply because, you know, we share her with them 1 day a week, and any other calls outside of the 1 day that she's there are usually, hey, we're calling you, we need you to come out and help us out with something. So which is why you see that a little bit higher. Some of the other things that she's doing, which are worth noting, is the amount of training that she's providing to not just us, but to other areas here in Clackamas County. So just for us alone, she did almost 40 hours of training in mental health to Lake Oswego patrol officers since she's been hired. She did 4 hours on suicide awareness to Lake O Fire. She's done some training for de-escalation for our own library. And she's doing the exact same thing over in West Lynn, obviously not to the same extent hour-wise, but, you know, she's providing training in mental health to West Lynn. Same with their library, providing de-escalation tactics. And she's coordinated 2 40-hour crisis intervention trainings and has attended some conferences nationally. So doing a fantastic job for us there. As a former motor, I love talking about traffic violations. So this is what you'll see over here the last few years. So in 2022, we cited roughly a little over 4,000 violations. Now, that's not tickets, that's just violations cited. So you might have someone who was speeding and talking on their cell phone and not wearing a seatbelt. That's 3 violations. This is a 10% increase from 21 to 22. And obviously, our main focus is reducing crashes through proactive enforcement. And most of these stops, while we have our patrol doing a great deal, are initiated by our motor officers. And we were actually short one for a good part of the year last year. He retired, and so we were kind of running with one. And now we've just filled that other second spot, so be very, very careful when you're out there. His bike's in the shop, but as soon as it's back, we'll have 2 of them rolling around out there. And just like last year, our top 3 violations cited were speed was number 1, the use of the cell phone while driving was number 2, and failed to obey traffic control device was number 3. And that accounts for almost 60% of every citation that we write. And we know those are obviously violations that contribute to crashes. So that's what we're trying to focus on. And so talking about stops, that gets us to the Statistical Transparency of Policing Program, or the CJC's STOP program, which is a mandate to collect certain demographic data for discretionary stops. So this isn't that we get dispatched to something and then we make contact with a person. This is the officer decides to make a contact with someone just based on whatever it is that they're seeing. They use 3 robust models for analysis, and they look for disposition discrepancies and indicators of potential bias or profiling. Out of the roughly 5,500 stops that they analyzed for our department, their goal is obviously to look for evidence of disparate treatment and look for discrepancies. Us and every other agency in the state, actually there was no agency that was identified as having a statistically significant disparity in 2 or more tests. That's significant because that's what triggers the DPSST review or the Training Academy review to come in and say, hey, what's going on here? What is it you guys need? The first category that we looked at was, or that they looked at, was the decision to stop, which is also formally known as the veil of darkness model. The theory being that if bias is playing a factor in why we are making traffic stops or subject contacts, that you're likely to see a much higher rate of a stop of a particular demographic during the daytime when you can perceive the race or whatever that protected class is versus at nighttime. And we're pretty much even across the board on all of them. So there was no disparity that was noted there. The KPT hit rate is a search analysis. We don't do enough discretionary searches to where we actually have enough data for them to analyze. The theory behind that being that if we are basing our search criteria, the decision to search, on purely objective behaviors, then ideally, between person A, B, and C, I'm going to find, I have the same chance of maybe finding contraband or evidence of a crime. If you're just picking on, picking folks to search based on a protected characteristic, then you might have a higher number of searches and not finding as much stuff, right? Because it's not based on behavior. The last thing that came up, and we were actually noted as of one of several agencies, was in the predicted disposition, and that is that demographic stop for a particular type of violation generally have the same outcome kind of across the board. For us and many others, we were noted as to having a higher citation rate for our Latinx drivers. And so we'll dive into that here in just a second. Much as like the chief said, is just to remind that these are small numbers, and so it doesn't take much to kind of move the needle in some ways, especially when you see the amount of stops that we make in some categories, in some demographics. So this is from the website to illustrate the data that's reflected and how they kind of look at the predicted mean and the actual mean, and then where it kind of triggers that look. If you remember on our initial slide, the vast majority of our traffic stops involve speeding vehicles, cell use, and drivers failing to obey a traffic control device. And that was actually consistent in traffic stops across all the demographics. So it was those top three is what we were looking for. And like I said, we were one of roughly 30 agencies that had the same disparity noted. So it's a common issue, but it's an issue that we want to get to the bottom of. So we start diving into what that looks like. So this is the outcomes across all demographics. And what the CJC does is they compare it to the white demographic. That's kind of the baseline, and everything comes off after that. You'll see in 2020 a pretty high citation rate. And you might remember that the reason why that was is when no one really knew what we were doing with COVID and we didn't know how it was spread and what to be careful of, we told our folks, hey, if you've got to make a traffic stop, it better be for a really egregious violation, right? If you're going to put yourself in that position to where you might get an exposure. And so that's why if we stopped you, you're probably getting a citation. And then over the years, that has gone down. And you can see overall, and in the white demographic, that's dropped, where it did drop for the Latinx drivers, but in 21 and then again in 22, and these are fiscal year data, so forgive me, it's a little bit different than how we normally run it because that's the way the CJC does it. It pretty much stayed consistent, about 50-50, so about 49% their citation versus warnings. And that's really where that flag came up. So we started diving into it. And this is the data geek part of me here trying to figure out, okay, hey, what's going on, and talking with our folks. So we examined the data from the CJC, and we also looked at our own e-ticketing data. So this is actually the citation data, not the stops. So remember, CJC only captures what we stopped someone for, not necessarily what we cited them for. And so when you look at this, as we were diving into the data, the first thing we noticed was a over-reporting issue where duplicate entries were getting in. So we worked with the CJC to fix that so that going forward that should be better. The other thing we did is we started looking at the citation rate. And again, so when we talk about the Latinx drivers, so the number one stop they got stopped for was speed. The number two stop they got stopped for was cell phone. And then the next one was fail to obey traffic control device, just like we talked about. Same with the white drivers. And the difference is when you start looking at this, that the citations for which they were issued, the violations that they were cited were different in the Latinx population. So the top 5 are up there, but what you'll notice is that there were more, in this particular case for the folks that we stopped, driving while suspended citations and driving uninsured citations. These are typically violations that most officers exercise a little less discretion on. It's more of if we run into it, we tend to cite for, especially on the driving uninsured, which oftentimes can be a fix-it ticket, you know, depending on what it is they have. So maybe they just don't have, the driver doesn't have the insurance with them, so we write that citation. And then they go in and they tell the judge, see, look, I had it, and then it gets dismissed. But when you look at roughly 500 traffic stops, that's what we had for the Latinx population. When you look at the percentages of the driving while suspended and driving uninsured, it counts to almost 20% of all the stops. And so that starts to explain a little bit in this particular case and in this particular year, maybe some of where that discrepancies are coming from. Whereas when you look at it in the white demographic, and we only brought that up because that's what CJC compares to, it's only about 6% in total. You know, so we're wondering, whereas our officers are citing for speed, cell use, and failure to be traffic control device, they're also running into some of these other violations.
So I'm going to jump in really quick. I think this is one of the things I'd like to highlight about being a learning organization. This is a deeper dive that we took into the data that was not required under the CJC or under the stops data collection. Once we saw that flag, we really wanted to understand what did that mean to us. So I think taking a better look at it really helped us to be able to get a bigger picture and be able to provide that information to you and to the community.
Yeah, and as the chief said, you know, we're taking this disparity as a chance to continue to improve our performance. You know, we have an opportunity to look at everything. So not just on the technical side, but look at our training, look at our stops, talk to our people and figure out, you know, what's going on. Hopefully in the future, we instituted a technical fix to the form itself that captures the data, and it makes every field mandatory, including a new field called most serious offense. So you could stop someone, say, for speeding, and you could end up arresting them for a warrant. We want to capture both of that information. We historically have not. So we'll see what that looks like here this next year, and we're curious to see how that all plays out.
Yeah.
Oh, does it say 20%?
Well, the Latinx equals 51%, and the white is 38%. Are there categories that are missing out of here that?
Well, I think it's that citation, right, piece.
Oh, so these are just the top 5 violations. Oh, okay. So there are other violations that are playing in here, yeah, okay. And we just broke it up by the percentages here. Sorry about that. Thank you for that. Because there's a lot of, I mean, there anywhere from 42 different violations, depending on the demographic, up to 109, and that's a really big pie chart with a lot of slivers.
Captain,
Right.
did you look at this, if you took out the other, if you looked at just cases, if you compared, you know, the white violations, the Latinx violations just for speed, and you took out where there was multiple and just the speed, then does it line up?
It's a really good question, and that's one of the things I actually hope to talk to the CJC about. So I like the data. I need their expertise in the statistician folks that they have to be able to help us out. So their goal is, when they see this information, is to present it to us so that, just like the chief talked about, we can take that deeper dive and really look into it and see, is it something that we're doing? Is it something we're seeing? Is it a technical issue? And once we identify kind of what those are, and it's taken about this long to figure out, okay, this is where we're seeing some of it, we actually then meet with the CJC and go, hey, this is what we found. What can you tell us? Like, how does this change what it is that we have here? So it's a great question, and it's what we're looking to find out.
That's great.
Yeah. All right, well, and that brings us to our use of force information, and this is a critical area of what we report here in Lake Oswego. And I'm not going to, I did this last year, but I'm not going to read the slide, but please, when you get a chance, read the slide, because it's really important of what it is we actually capture and report on. We really do have a low threshold for reporting force. We definitely err on the side of caution and documenting any force that's displayed or used. Aside from monthly reviews by myself and the patrol lieutenant, we have a yearly review, and that's where a lot of this data comes from, where we take our head trainer, we bring in other folks, and we take a deep dive into essentially what were the trends, training equipment recommendations, what were the causes of the force used, what types of force, and the circumstances surrounding it. As you'll see here, the majority of our contacts that result in some sort of use of force are calls for service that we were dispatched to, nothing that we're self-initiating. So it's actually pretty small. I will caution you as well, when you start thinking about how many uses of force we had versus how many incidents we have, it is extremely rare. So out of 25,000 plus incidents last year, we only had 56 incidents where there was an actual documented use or display of force. So that is less than 1/4% of everything that we did resulted in some sort of use or display of force. So again, very rare. This is a 37% decrease from the year prior, going from 90 to 56. And then in those 56 incidents, there were only 3 noted injuries to subjects. There were a couple others for officers. Most of the times, just minor scrapes and bruises. There was one, so both. So just up there is just for the subjects. There were 2 officers that noted like minor bruises and scrapes, nothing significant. The 3 that you see up there, 2 actually belong to one person who got bit twice on a dog call, who just, fled from a traffic stop and then fought with officers and then tried to fight the dog. And so the dog bit him twice.
Bad outcome.
There were no reported claims of use of force against the city. I'll point that out. So, and then across the board, we've seen decreases in use of force incidents, despite obviously incidents, police incidents on the whole rising. So I think that's indicative of solid training and going to calls, trying to figure out how do we problem solve in creative ways.
Injured, which is really 2 people, right?
Yep.
How many officers injured in 22? 2. Thank you.
Yep.
So one of the things that I'd like to highlight as well, I mean, Captain Simon pretty much hit it, is our threshold for what we report as a use of force is much higher than what other agencies that I've been around are reporting on. The simple display of a weapon is a number that we capture that a lot of places don't. So I think that adds to the transparency of what it is that we're doing. We're breaking, and he'll get to it, but this year we took a look at it and we actually separated the 2 and broke them out.
All right, so we'll get into some more graphs, and hopefully I didn't make any more mistakes. I already had to send one to Carrie last night, so thank you for that. Let's talk about the left graph, which illustrates the total number of force types and the number of officers involved. So much like last year, we talked about that out of those 56 incidents, we had about 154 uses of force or displays of force, right? Those are the different force types, and that was shared amongst 35 officers. So 35 officers were involved in what it is that we did, last year. Again, that's a 39% decrease in the total number of force types reported in 21. As we're going through this, I think it's important to know that many incidents require multiple officers to respond and provide various options for the safe resolution of each incident. It also helps us on the de-escalation side. In that middle graph, we had 31 instances where multiple officers had to use or display force. This is, if we run into a particularly violent subject, and one has a less lethal option, maybe like a taser or a pepper spray, and the other one goes hands-on. So that's where that information is captured. That's a 40% decrease from the year prior. We had 14 incidents that where officers used multiple force types on the same subject. So that could be that we show up on a call and maybe we think it's a weapon call. And so we show up and we have a firearm display, but then we realize it's not that. And then we go more to hands-on. So an officer might have 2 uses of force then on that particular call. That's a 48% decrease from the year prior. Each and every display or use of force has to be independently justified, and the officers do that in their documentation. So you can't just willy-nilly make something up and say, hey, I'm just going to use this for this particular circumstance because I want to. Everything has to be judged based on the totality of the circumstances, based on our case law and our training. So everything that they do, each and every time they point something at someone has to be justified. Every time they put their hands on someone has to be justified. On the right graph, you'll see that it's our canine deployment, so a little bit less than the year before. So they had 8 instances where our canines were displayed or used. So it doesn't mean that a dog was used to bite, could have been used to track, and the dog just sat there and barked, and we said, please give up, or else we're going to send the dog. And they said, I give up, except for the one guy that got bit twice. This is a 63% decrease from the year prior. Like I said, there were 2 canine bites, and there were 4 incidents where our canine teams assisted other law enforcement agencies, which is fairly common in these areas. And that's about a 50% decrease from the year prior. This data that we're going to start getting into a little bit now is this one's, I think, going to lead right into our new data, but this is the percentages of force broken down. As the chief talked about, that our threshold being very low and how we will over-report When you look at that left graph, you'll see a handgun displayed is the highest percentage of all the force that we used or displayed. The chief had a good question. He said, well, what's the difference between, what are the items that we actually just display versus what we point at person, right? Because that feels different. And when we went and looked at that, and by we, I went and looked at that, and it took a while, because it's a manual process right now until I think Benchmark's going to help with that. But you can see how much everything drops, and really the highest degree of force that is actually used is going to be our physical control, which is what you would expect when we have to put our hands on someone.
Is it literally like you're doing this?
Yep.
Versus this?
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. And so, like I said, when you take that out, it dramatically changes it.
They know you have a gun, and the gun is pointed at you.
So many things I want to say, but we'll just keep going.
All right, moving on. So last year, we tried to identify overall common incident factors. Essentially, what are we involved in that is creating these use of force encounters? And how did we come into contact with the 61 people that were involved in those 56 incidents involving force? And the most common factors we saw are the ones that you see up there. So is it a domestic violence related incident? Is there, is one of the factors, is there a history of and or reported actual weapon possession, in the particular case that we're involved in? Is it stolen vehicle related, which often involves other crimes and high risk stops? Is it a warrant arrest, or where we're kind of mandated, hey, we've got to go take this person into custody? It's not one of those where you walk away. And then we get into some of the other property crimes. And then was there a behavioral health issue that was contributing to this? It's important to note that none of these are independent of themselves. You could have multiple of these common factors on any one incident. And so from there, we started looking at the demographics and capturing that this last year. And so you can see up there, overwhelmingly number one is white males, which I think is nationally is pretty much what we run into. And then you can see the different numbers as we go down. The unknown is, that was us trying to set spike strips out on a eluding vehicle, and we missed, and that happens, and we just don't know who was driving. So that's why you have one unknown up there. This breaks it down by demographic, and it's in the order in which you saw the chart before, so just based on the numbers. And so you can kind of get a sense of, for the folks that we're contacting on the use of force incidents we had, these were the factors that were present for a lot of them. And this is a new process. Like I said, we did this by hand this last year. It took a long time. We've redesigned our use of force template within the benchmark program that the chief talked about. And so ideally, in a perfect world, it will pull these analytics all by itself once we get that reporting done. Move on to the next one here. And then move on to the next one, unless you guys have questions there. But we'll talk about complaints. And there are essentially two types for us. So we have formal complaints, which essentially is conduct, if it's true, would be a violation of policy or law. And that could be unlawful use of force. It could be a violation of standards of conduct. It could be a bias-related complaint. It could be any one of those things. Those are externally generated and internally generated. So if we recognize a policy issue or personnel issue in-house, that we can address it through the formal complaint process. Those are formally investigated in what you would typically call the IA process. And then we have our informal complaints, which is conduct, if true, would not be a violation of policy or law. So this would be like someone that they got a speeding ticket. They didn't like that they got a speeding ticket. They called in to say, hey, I didn't think I should have got a speeding ticket. Yeah, they might be upset about it, but the officer didn't do anything wrong. They exercised their discretion to do that. And so out of over 25,000 incidents last year, we went from 9 total complaints to 11. So not a huge increase. There were 4 internal complaints. There were 7 citizen and external complaints. There were no use of force complaints in there. Of the citizen complaint or the external complaint that came in, only 1 complaint was actually sustained. All the other ones were either not substantiated or not sustained. And we attribute this really to good people with involved supervisors, all trying to do the right things. There's still work to be done. Every one of these, as the chief talked about, as a learning organization, is a learning opportunity for all of our folks. It's a learning opportunity for our supervisors and all the way across the board for us to continue to improve. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And with that,
Great photograph.
yeah.
Any questions?
Just one question. What is the, going back to the use of force and the reasons, when you say behavioral health, is that the sole reason for the call was related to behavioral health, or was that, a component of something else?
In some cases, it could be the sole reason that we run into it. In other cases, it's a mix, right? So we've run into, folks that we get call in on a welfare check, and they're having a behavioral health issue, and they're operating in a way that's a danger to themselves or others. So we try and take them into protective custody. If they're running into traffic, we don't want them to get hit by a car.
Okay.
But we could have a situation where it's a domestic, and really the underlying cause of the domestic situation is there's a behavioral health issue with one or more of the folks that are involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor Rapp, question?
Really no questions about the document and the report you sent. Really just anecdotally, what I've been hearing from community members is how great of a police department we have and how happy they are, and your solutions oriented, and everybody's happy that you're here, and just super proud of y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Burdick?
I concur with Councilor Raff, but also just want to thank you for taking the deeper dive into understanding the data and really trying to figure out the why, and also being a learning organization that whether it's good or bad, you're always assessing and trying to improve. So I just want to thank you for that. And I think because of that, you earn the trust and respect of the community, and that's huge. So I just really want to thank you for everything that you do and all of your colleagues, because we were so fortunate to live in this community and have you supporting us and keeping us safe. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Wilmot?
Ditto to what they said. I think this is an excellent presentation, and I think I've been through this whole process from the beginning with having 40 or 50 people or 60 people in the audience wanting answers and not knowing. And tonight we have a reporter and assistant city manager and two other people that are next on the agenda. I think that shows that you guys are doing exactly what you said you would do. And I would say that my only comment is to get this message out. And I don't know if you, Rotary is always looking for people to get an update. The chamber, I would even do a presentation to the school board. You've got great news here. And yes, what are we on a growth mindset? So we're always going to improve. But I think you've got some very good information here that the community would like to know. And the more partners and people that we can get this message out to, I think is going to be important for the continuation of having a fabulous, excellent police department. So anyway.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'm sure Captain Simon is really looking forward to the Rotary presentation. So
yes,
yes,
we'll schedule a meeting.
That'll be great. The only thing I'll jump in really quickly for transparency. We're going to make sure that all of it ends up on the website. So people are going to be able, not only we'll be able to go out and make those contacts that you're recommending, which I think are great. All of it will be there for anybody to view.
And there's more data available on the website now than we ever had before. Not a dashboard per se, but.
Well, I learned over the last year that I'm a data geek. I didn't know that until somebody informed me of that, but the two of us hang out together looking at the same stuff.
Are we still moving towards that dashboard?
Yeah.
I think some of the confines that we're in are the platform that we operate on. So I think we have to take a look at what is available for us to develop. And I think a dashboard would be really nice to have. That's just not the platform that we have right now.
I see. But you're putting this data on there, and the call logs are on there.
Yes.
All that stuff is okay. Thank you, Councilor.
Yeah, thank you. Captain Simon and Chief. I haven't seen the bike yet. Yeah, and I saw the speed ticket, that was less speed, among those, I was one of them.
You're not a statistic.
Yeah, on the speed, yeah.
I was actually behind you as we left City Hall yesterday, and your brake light was on all the way up Bay Avenue. I meant to tell you.
No, yeah.
Okay.
I'm very good. Sometimes, you just carry yourself away and, it's a 25. The officer, I wanted to say, no, I did not go 12 miles of this. I said, no. But I just want to thank you. I've been with Jay, who, I think the testimony was when he was retiring, the number of folks who were here. And there are people out of the blue who came from the community to just say how great the police was, how he was an example of police, with the community. And you see our police even sometimes seeing them helping people on the road. I mean, it feels good for me because the truth of the matter is people like me are the one who suffer the most from the police around the country. And it's a fact, to see that our police is doing this kind of work and is working with communities of color, respond to racism. I was talking, and honestly, you were not there. 4 days ago, I was talking to a person of color who was telling me, wow, the chief is really a wonderful person, very nice, and I felt very good. I told him, are we talking about the same chief?
What do I owe?
So, yeah, but it's a testimony that people are saying how you are engaging, because it was difficult to replace our former chief who was everywhere, was respected in the community. And when you have those chants, you get scared, easy, but honestly, you are living up to that. And that's something wonderful. And Captain Simon is going we were together in that ceremony of the AIPA. So, and it also your presence there, that how folks were interacting with you, it shows that we have a very likable police that comes everywhere. They come to the community, and that's what is important. So the data are important, but it's the presence in the field. We are very lucky in Lake Oswego. When you call the police 3 minutes or even less, they're over there. In some communities that I don't want to talk about, you call the police 1 hour, 2, they won't, or they say, oh no, we don't have time for that. But here you call your car, there's a break-in, they come right away. So it's something we are very grateful of, and I'm very happy that you have full staff also. That's something important, and keep up the good work. And this is transparency. You come and show. That's what council said last year. Yeah. We wanted to have more information about what is happening. You're doing it. The dashboard, it's something we can, but we'll have this in our website. People will look. This is very clear. We did use of force. You work the job you are doing, you cannot do it without doing certain things. And that's, I'm just glad that you folks are working, and what council can do to help. We are open to that for self-care, for your workers, and for all the police force. I'm very happy to see that there are more women out there. And, if we can have more people that look like me, more women in position of leadership, that's also important. And I think, when I see our police, I'm happy. I say, wow, we have now. And the people, the children we are teaching, they look up to that. There are women that are here as police. So thank you for your work. And we are
Thank
happy.
you. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Corrigan.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's really difficult to quantify the quality of life that you bring to our community. And I think it's all too easy for us to take it for granted. And I want you to know that we should not, and I do not. So I just want to say thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Corrigan. Thank you, gentlemen. And to the whole department, these numbers that you present here tonight, we really appreciate the report and your commitment to following up with us in our discussion in past years. To having updates like this are very helpful for the community to hear, to get reported on, for the community to have this information. I know means a lot. And the results that we see in the data, the results of all these, as I'm looking at the screen, the group photo here, the folks are able to hire, train. You two are great leaders, but those are results of the kind of people that we're able to bring into the department here. We owe a great, a lot of thanks. This is a very difficult job and yet a very critical job, and we entrust so much to the folks within the department, and you've done a great job with the recruitment, and we recognize each one of them out there. Some of them we see, some of them we don't see because they're working overnight and all that stuff, and some of us see them more than others. And if anyone has not, we appreciate the opportunities to go on the ride-alongs, and also if anyone has not yet done it, do I don't know what you call it, but a sit-in down in the dispatch center, the sit-along, which is very interesting, and they're doing phenomenal work down in the LOCOM as well. So
Thank you.
Thank you both very much for being here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your good work. Okay, appreciate that. Sit along. It's a lot of fun. It's very interesting, and you get to listen to the calls. You get to listen. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Is there any information from council? No. Is there any information from the?
I just have one thing, is to make sure you all know that the community survey for the Community and Urban Forest Plan is now live. So if you get any questions, it's live. It'll be on the homepage. If it's not already, you don't have to click twice.
Great. Thank you. Yes, thank you, City Manager and Councilor.
And I would just encourage anyone who hasn't, the Arts Council is working on their long-term plan, and they are doing a survey, which is open until the end of the month. So if you haven't taken that survey, it's a great opportunity to put your feedback and input in about the art in our community. So go to the Arts Council website and take that survey, please.
That's great. Thank you, Councilor Burdick. With that, we are going to recess the City Council meeting and call to order the Redevelopment Agency. We're on board business tonight. We just have approval of the LORA meeting minutes from May 16th and June 6th. Is there a motion to approve the LORA meeting minutes as written?
Move to approve LORA meeting minutes as written.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. And then for board members only, we have appointments of committee members to the LORA budget. Is there a motion to adopt LORA Resolution 23-02?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, and I abstain, so motion passes 5-0 with one abstention. This meeting of the Redevelopment Agency is now adjourned, and we will reconvene and call to order the City Council meeting, and we are going to go into executive session, so I will ask Attorney Oswego to please read the legal parameters for us.
Thank you, Mayor Buck and members of the council. The City Council of Lake Oswego will now meet in executive session for the purpose of considering information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection, and to meet with their counsel to receive legal advice. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend the executive session, but representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as described in the agenda. No decision will be made in executive session, and at the end of executive session, we will adjourn. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, so this will conclude, thank you, Attorney Oswego. This will conclude the public portion of the meeting. We are going to take a 5-minute recess, and we will reconvene in the workroom.
So, okay.